Very good morning to you, by the way. Morning, Tory, with me, Mike Graham.
Just some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the home of common sense.
Loads to talk about, I promise you that. Loads and loads and loads.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan.
How realistic do you think a ceasefire is this week?
There's a very good chance that we'll have a settlement, an agreement of some kind.
We basically have two countries.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory, 3 minutes past 6. It is the 1st of October. It is a brand new month and, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's a brand new era. We appear to have entered into the world of hateful politics, thanks to Keir Starmer yesterday, getting up on stage at Liverpool, where it was the final closing speech of Labour Party conference, which has been riddled with doubt, riddled with all sorts of infighting, riddled with he said, she said, people stabbing each other in the back, Andy Burnham saying he wasn't interested in running for Prime Minister, then keeping saying that he thought the Prime Minister was doing it wrong, then saying there was a culture of fear, then saying that actually he gave his full backing to the Prime Minister and he wasn't going to try and take over. Yesterday afternoon, Keir Starmer did something I think an awful lot of people are quite shocked about this morning. We obviously covered it massively yesterday right here on Talk. I was listening to Jeremy Carl's show yesterday afternoon and Kevin O'Sullivan last night on the political asylum. The day Labour dragged politics into the gutter is the front page of the Daily Mail this morning. Desperate Keir Starmer accuses Nigel Farage of not liking Britain. Then David Lammy, who formerly was the Foreign Secretary, is now the Deputy Prime Minister, claims Reform leader Nigel Farage flirted with the Hitler Youth and then was forced to apologise and retract it. Nigel Farage responded, and I don't think I've ever seen him quite so angry as this, by accusing the Prime Minister of inciting the radical left, and says that Keir Starmer is no longer fit to hold office. So, ladies and gentlemen, the battle plans have been drawn. We want to hear from all of you this morning, because I'm sure that many of you will have a view on being called the enemy. Many of you will have a view on being called racist. We talked about this on Monday after Keir Starmer raised the racism issue in an interview with Laura Kunsberg, when he declared that he thought that Reform's policies on immigration were racist. He shied away from saying that Nigel Farage was racist, but clearly there's a lot of people in the Labour government who think that Nigel Farage and anyone who supports him is a racist. And I think that is entirely wrong. I think it's entirely shameful. And as Nigel Farage says, he thought that Keir Starmer was a decent man. They could have their differences of opinion, but he thought fundamentally he was a decent man who would do decent things for this country. Well, I think yesterday Keir Starmer proved exactly what he is. He is a desperate man, drowning literally hoping to take anybody else down with him and clutching at any straw that he can find that might keep him in power for just 5 minutes longer. I think it's pretty disgraceful. I think he brings shame on the Labour Party. I think he brings shame on this country. And for him to make out that he's somehow reclaiming the British flag, I think quite frankly and quite honestly is a disgrace. 0344 499 1000. Lots of other stories to talk about this morning, of course, but this is the main effort. This is the main shot in town. Keir Starmer goes back to Downing Street today, having dragged politics into the gutter. What's he going to do next? I ask myself. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Very good morning to you. Welcome to the 1st of October. What is it they say? A pinch, a punch, the 1st of the month, and all that sort of thing. Theo Rushton was here. Very good morning to you.
Great to be with you, Mike.
I say this without any fear or favour. The Daily Mail say, who's the nasty party now? It feels like we crossed some kind of Rubicon yesterday in the world of politics. You've covered it for a long time. I have, not in quite as much depth as you. But I don't think I've ever seen anything like a speech like that in any party political situation.
No, and I think it's a high-risk strategy that is probably going to, in fact, I know it's going to backfire.
Almost certainly.
It's if you know, Labour needs, Keir Starmer needs those voters who have left Labour from the last election to go and vote for reform because they're frustrated at the fact that he hasn't done what he said he'd do, whether it's smash the gangs or fix the broken economy or whatever. Right. He needs them to come back to Labour. Now, if you turn around and you say that those people, in your speech by inference, are racist for supporting reform, they're not going to like you. If you don't like the voters that you need to vote for you, they're not going to suddenly like you back. Right. And that's that's fundamentally the danger now for Keir Starmer, is that yes, that was a speech that went down well at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool. The delegates liked it. They'll give him a stay of execution. Fine. Yeah. But to the country, and particularly to those voters, those disaffected voters who have turned towards Nigel Farage and the Reform UK, to suddenly turn around and say they're racist or they don't believe in this country, when they're the ones who are suffering or finding life really difficult.
Exactly right.
To suddenly expect them to come back.
And to talk about fairness in the way that he talked about it, which was one-directional, only, not multi-directional, because fairness goes both ways. How fair is it for people to find they've been on housing waiting lists for many, many years, only to get leapfrogged over by somebody from Somalia because he's come here in the last 2 weeks on a boat. That's what I call fairness and unfairness. He doesn't address any of that. And also, it shows the paucity of ideas in places like Downing Street, where the country's sort of ruling party thinks the best thing they can do is appeal to the people in the room, i.e. at Labour Party conference, with ignoring the people outside of that, which is the majority of people in the country.
But the paucity of ideas, but also the desperation of Keir Starmer's position now politically. He came into this conference having lost Angela Rayner, Lord Manderson, and two of his strategists, I should say, key people within his number 10 operation. And there was a sense of desperation that he just had to get through this conference, hold it together. I think, the prevailing view is that he has done that for now. Yeah. But there are far bigger obstacles coming up. You can't ignore the budget, which I think is going to be very difficult for the Chancellor and for Keir Starmer. We're already talking about, the Jack Elsom's got the exclusive in The Sun. I see about Rachel Reeves going to lift the two-child benefit cap. Right. That isn't the way
They can't afford to do it.
They can't.
Where is the money going to come from? They're already saying this is going to lift more people out of poverty. Well, only if you give them more taxpayers' money, which they don't have to give.
And so that's going to add, to lift that cap, it costs £3.5 billion a year. Is that coming on top of the £40 billion worth of tax rises?
And on top of the £5 billion that they couldn't remove from the welfare benefits claim before. Dan Hodges, again, a man who's been has been charting Starmer's demise with great skill. He says, a good speech, but Starmer is still doomed, and this is how the end will come. And he reckons that the run into Starmer's removal will be marked by a series of waypoints. First, Burnham's ally, Lucy Powell, will be crowned deputy leader, which I think we all expect to happen, because she's well ahead of Bridget Phillipson, who was trying to be the sort of insider job.
Well, she's the insider.
Yeah. Rachel Reeves will deliver her budget, surrendering in similar fashion the final slender threads of the government's fiscal and political credibility. Soon after that, Morgan Wicks-Sweeney will be announced as stepping down as the senior aide, as chief of staff, and then the final reckoning, if it goes that far, is of course the May elections, where he'll get slaughtered. And Nigel Farage is vowing to teach him a lesson in those. And I've never seen Nigel Farage quite so angry as he was yesterday, because it was really, frankly, a disgraceful attack, personal attack, on Nigel Farage as a man.
Yes, it was, but I think also, and I saw that, seen the quotes from Nigel Farage, I think there's something there's an opportunity in this speech for Nigel Farage.
Oh, totally.
And what I think is that opportunity, and firstly, there were 2 points to, it was quite Trumpian, his response. I mean, it was like, we're talking about we're talking about Charlie Kirk.
Well, if you're going to call him Trumpian, you might...
No, I'm not saying it's an insult. I'm not saying it's an insult.
No, but hang on. But don't forget that this is exactly what Biden did.
Yeah.
Starmer made a Biden-esque speech.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, calling them deplorables and all of that stuff that Hillary Clinton did. What I'm saying is that if he's borrowing from Trump, then Starmer's borrowing from Biden.
I'm not sorry, Mike. Just so you're clear and your listeners are clear. I'm not saying that as an insult.
No, I'm not saying that either.
I
don't think it is. Listen, to be called Trumpian is not an insult. I don't mean that. I just mean that he is being like Donald Trump in answering what is a similar accusation that the Democrats made against Trump back in 2020.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's completely correct. The other thing I think that Farage is doing, and this is, and we've heard this continually from the Reform UK leader, is to talk up Jeremy Corbyn. And what I think that will do is it will push Farage into the centre, and I think it will mean that many voters who aren't yet convinced by Nigel Farage will actually start to see him as the safe go-to option.
He's going to be the new Conservative Party, and this is what their strategy has been all along. They haven't had to say it, but it's been pretty obvious for anyone to see what they're doing. Many of their supporters haven't liked the fact that they brought some Tories in, some former Tories. Danny Kruger's in there, Nadine Dorries is in there, some Reform voters. But what he's doing by doing that is setting himself away from the likes of Advance UK and the people like Rupert Lowe and Ben Habib and Tommy Robinson and all of that. They're all over there in the extremist area, which is as far as he's concerned, and he's occupying the middle ground. So he's not just usurping the Conservative votes. He's actually becoming the new Conservative Party.
Yeah, and
that's what I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. And Starmer will be, and I think Starmer's speech plays into this, will be the figure on the left. And as we saw yesterday, there's pressure from Farage, but there's also huge amounts of pressure on Keir Starmer from the left, but especially around the issue of Palestine. Jeremy Corbyn, your party.
Well, look what he's done in the past month alone to make himself move even further away from the centre ground.
And we'll see that, particularly with the approach to the public finances and tax rises that are going to hit people, many of your listeners. And then I think that Farage becomes the safe go-to option, in the same way that Boris Johnson came in 2019 when everybody was squabbling about Brexit and the country was just tearing their hair out, like, when are we going to get this done? And says, don't worry, I'll sort it. And I remember going up to see some friends in Leicestershire who were nothing to do with politics, like they're just not involved, and they were big Remain voters, and I said, who are you voting for? And they said, we're voting for Boris Johnson because we just want to leave the European Union. We're done. We're fed up with this. We are the he became the safe go-to option, and I think Farage is fast becoming that. In a way that
Starmer's handing it to him on a plate. I mean, any decent sort of political strategist will say you don't call people racist, you don't attack people, even if you think they're too right-wing for the country to stomach, which I don't think obviously they are. You don't give them that gift. You don't hand them that power, because now they've got the power. But let's have a look at some of the clips for those of you who didn't see them yesterday. Here's Keir Starmer on talking about how he opposes racism.
Everyone seen. Everyone valued, wealth creation in every single community, working people in control of their public services, the mindless bureaucracy that chokes enterprise removed so we can build and keep building, clean British energy powering our homes, technology harnessed to drive us forward, our flags flying proudly as we celebrate difference and oppose racism.
When he says our flags, he makes it sound like, somehow the Union Jack is a Labour flag. They're all, obviously, old Yvette Cooper was brought down the whole supply from her house to give to everybody in the front row to wave. I mean, it was pathetic, wasn't it? This idea that, this is a party, everybody knows what they really think. We know what Emily Thornby thinks about the flag. We know what David Lammy thinks about Britain and about the Empire and about reparations. We know what they really think. The fact that they're trying to make out that they're really patriotic now because they've got a flag, they fundamentally misunderstand patriotism. Patriotism is about flying a flag. It's about actually being proud to be British, right? And to try and make that into an argument about, reformers saying certain people aren't British, that's not the point at all.
No, and you know, it wasn't so long ago when, you know, Labour conferences under the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn, the British flag you couldn't find one for love or money.
No.
I mean, they're all Palestinian
Well,
flags.
exactly. Yeah, or Irish flags or something, you know, absolutely ridiculous.
You know.
Here's Starmer talking about Nigel Farage specifically.
We can all see these snake oil merchants on the right, on the left, but be in no doubt conference, none of them have any interest in national renewal, because decline is good for their business. I mean, think about it. When was the last time that you heard Nigel Farage say anything positive about Britain's future? He can't. He doesn't like Britain, doesn't believe in Britain, wants you to doubt it just as much as he does.
Again, they've been working on this one probably for a while in the backdoor corridors of power. But what does he mean Nigel Farage doesn't like Britain? What sort of ridiculous statement is that?
No, and what is...
It's nonsensical. Nigel Farage has been fighting for Britain to have its independent status for decades. You know, he went to the European Parliament. He was elected several times to run the Brexit Party, you know, to get Brexit done. If it wasn't for him, we would still be in the European Union, right? How can you make an accusation like that? You might dislike Nigel Farage for a lot of reasons, but you don't say he doesn't like Britain. It's ridiculous.
And I agree with that. But he also talks about this national renewal. What does that even mean? What does it mean? It's sort of a word soup.
Means nothing. Well, like everything Starmer touches, it means absolutely nothing. And here he is, like, being pictured with his wife. What's his wife doing in every picture that he's at? Wearing sunglasses, like some kind of, you know, woman walking around like his carer. You know, but you know, better make sure wherever you are, you get pictures taken with your wife. What's all that about? Come on, you can't be speechless on that one. It's too early for that.
No,
I'll show you this picture first. How about
okay,
this? This is great, right? Now, you can see here Lord Ali, who's still not a million miles away from the heart of government. He's wearing the same shoes as Keir Starmer. They're wearing what look like Adidas. I'm not an expert on Adidas.
They are Adidas, yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, you know, some people will tell you exactly what model they are. They're blue with 3 white stripes. Why are they wearing the same shoes and the same basic outfit? It's a simple question. You know? What is that all about?
It can't be coincidence.
No.
He is... and
what can only be described as a very good summation of Keir Starmer's premiership. He's with a dog there, but it's not his. He's got a dog on a lead that belongs to somebody else. And that's pretty much sums up Keir Starmer. He's wearing somebody else's shoes, somebody else's trousers, somebody else's jacket, and he's got somebody else's dog. What does he stand for? Absolutely nothing. I think that's fair.
Yeah. I don't know how you end up going. A Labour Party leader ends up, or Labour Prime Minister ends up going to their party conference and ends up dog sitting. That's difficult to explain. It's difficult to explain why he's got the same trainers as the man, of course.
That's really weird, isn't it? Well, they got a job lot or something, and Lord Ali turns up in the back of number 10 in an articulated lorry and goes, "Right, here we go, lads." He's like this sort of old Del boy. Right, I've got 50 pairs of Adidas.
You can sell these down the market, right? So yeah, they're here.
All right, Wes, you want some? I've got them in red as well, if you want. Rodney, where's the red ones?
Yeah, they're not even that. They just look a bit naff, don't they?
Yeah, it's just very weird.
Because of course Lord Ali. But look, Lord Ali.
We still don't know, by the way, why Lord Ali had a pass to Downing Street.
All access
right?
pass, not
and
just
we don't.
pass.
And you wonder whether he's still got some kind of pass into Downing Street, because it's all got. I mean, you know, the media have sort of given up on investigating that.
So yeah, he's still got. Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, I think he had to give back his. He had to give back the AAA pass.
He did.
Back in. This was going back more than a year now.
But you know as well as I do that somebody could slip him another one and go, "Here's another pass."
Yeah, he could do, and of course because that pass is like to all of the political meetings. I mean, it's a hugely influential pass, but it does. I think if there's a serious point, like it's either like an extraordinary coincidence that they've got the same trainers, or there is a. You know, the man still wields influence.
Of course he does.
He's still there, isn't he?
Well, he's been there since the days of Tony Blair. Don't forget, this is a guy who flew to Syria, right, on behalf of the government to have conversations with Bashar al-Assad about what to do about, you know, bombing Syria. He also went to Baghdad during the time of the aftermath of the Iraq War to have conversations with the sitting sort of ruling party to see how they could, you know, transition into democracy. You know, this guy's been at the heart of everything that Labour have done since about 2004.
Yeah.
You know, he's not going anywhere.
he's still there, and he's still at the Labour Party conference where this picture was taken,
Yeah.
and of course with Keir Starmer and Lady Starmer and the dog. I couldn't even see the dogs. Did the dog have a name, or was it just
no? Apparently, it was a passerby who kind of gave him the dog for a picture. I mean, who knows? I mean, a couple of the other papers have got how that happened. It's just all a bit odd,
a bit weird.
Why? Why?
Yeah, Starmer, I think, and this is to Dan Hodges' point. I think they're talking about the end of Starmer, but I think
they're just talking about when now.
It's when, and they've just got to find somebody, and they don't have somebody at the moment. You have to remember, of course, that Starmer can, unlike with the Conservative Party, where you have the leadership challenge, and then you have a race between whoever wants to race to be the next leader. Starmer can stand in a race. Right. So if there's a challenge,
I wouldn't bother. I'll just advise him now, just don't bother. I mean, he's only at 29% at the moment.
Yeah, but it might be, if they can only rally around one left-wing candidate, that actually many of his own MPs, it just turns into a complete bunfight. And many of his own MPs decide, well, we can't have, let's say it's Andy Burnham comes back, I don't think it will be, but let's say Andy Burnham comes back, or Angela Rayner decides to have a, from the back benches, decides to have a go in.
The biggest problem, though, for Starmer right now is what the effect of what he said yesterday will have on the electorate. Let's forget for a moment about all the internecine doings inside the Labour Party. It's the country that people want to know about this morning. That's what they care about, because let's have a look at what Nigel Farage said in response to Starmer.
Labour says these policies are racist and immoral, and by implication, Reform supporters, Reform voters, Reform sympathisers are racist too. Yes, if you think we should control our borders, you are, by the definition of the Prime Minister and his cabinet, all racists. Now, I don't normally worry about abuse being thrown at me. I've got kind of used to it over the course of the last few years. But to accuse countless millions of being racist is a very, very low blow. Why? Well, this language will incite and encourage the radical left. I'm thinking of Antifa and other organisations like that. It directly threatens the safety of our elected officials and our campaigners. And frankly, in the wake of the Charlie Kirk murder, I think this is an absolute disgrace.
And I think people yesterday were reacting to that in a way which is the same way that I was reacting to it, which is that he's absolutely right. What sort of maniac will put, those kinds of targets on people and claim that they're racist? Because there are enough nutters in the world who might be urged to do something. Whether it's throwing a milkshake, whether it's throwing a brick, whether it's throwing something more serious, whether it's using another kind of weapon. We've seen the result of driving people into those kind of places. And for the Prime Minister of this country to do that, I think is absolutely unbelievable and disgraceful.
And of course, about Lammy's comments that
we'll
she had to withdraw him saying. But it's a serious point, because if you go out with Farage, and I'm sure you saw at the Reform conference, it may have been a secure zone there, but when you go out,
he's surrounded by 7 people.
When I went out with him in Scunthorpe, it was literally like 10 people, and they were always, because of the security situation just out on the street, they were always trying to get him into a shop. So he was doing a tour of the high street, and he couldn't actually. When I knew Farage of old, right, you could just walk down the street and you get mobbed, it'd be this, that, and the other. That's all gone. Nobody is able to get. You can't get. Literally, they almost frisked people coming up to him, saying, "Okay, let's check you out, frisk you down, and now you can have your picture." And I think that's sad. In a way,
it was only last year. Don't forget, where that woman was done for throwing a milkshake over him.
It could have been so much worse. It was a milkshake that time.
It could have been anything. She's been rewarded by being, I think, given a slot on Big Brother. That's the left-wing establishment for you. This one from Michelle. It says, what I watched yesterday at the Labour shindig was incredibly concerning. A few things stood out, such as a Britain for all, the British project, you are our enemy, and nation renewal. Globalists out and proud. Mike, don't get me started on David Lammy. We'll come to David Lammy in a bit. But no, I think people genuinely are quite angry about what Starmer said yesterday and how he framed, the political situation as if he's, good and Nigel Farage is evil.
It's always been the way on the left. It's always been the way. There's always been this, you know it. There's always been this slight.
He talks about fairness, but he talks about fairness, right? Let's just list a few things. Is it fair to take away the winter fuel allowance from pensioners? No. Is it fair to tell farmers that they can't use the same inheritance tax loophole that he used to give his family a field full of donkeys, right? Is it fair to say to people, you're going to have to wait in line behind these migrants because they're more important than you are? Because that's what his policy says. You know, is it fair that we should be recognising a state of Palestine while Jewish people in this country are frightened to go down the road without fear of being beaten up by some scumbags, right? You know, is all of that fair? Because it doesn't seem to be to me.
No, it's not fair. It's not fair, and I think the fairness, you know, the narrative around fairness, the fairness, if you call it fairness, you know, that's been owned by Farage. That's if you wanted to put just a thread that runs through Reform's messaging, it is that. It is that message around fairness, and I think he's a Johnny-come-lately, Keir Starmer, with this speech. Yeah. He's turning up with the flag. He's turning up, talking, trying to redefine what fairness is, and I don't think your listeners and I don't think the country are going to buy it. The other thing I'd noticed, and I hadn't compared it just to the ear because I hadn't actually heard what Farage said. I'd read what Farage said, is I think he's got a connection problem, and it sounds, because I listened to Keir Starmer's speech, and I could have been listening. You could have got AI to deliver that. It doesn't. Right. He doesn't have the intonation. You don't hear, when you hear it. It's kind of excruciating because I think I'm listening to a robot.
But I'm
just trying to do that. I know the content, but I'm just talking about if you listen to Farage.
His delivery's awful.
If you listen to Farage, it feels like you're listening to somebody you know. Yeah. You know that voice. You know the intonation. You know the highs. You know the lows. You know there's a connection there that he feels like he's speaking to you. And Starmer doesn't have that. And for all the voice coaching that he's had, for all the I don't think he had. It was the voice coach.
Yeah, the voice coaching during COVID. When he got visited by the voice coach.
Yeah, at Christmas.
There's another breaking of the rules. One rule for him, two to Keir.
But it hasn't worked because he's not. It just sounds like it's coming straight off an auto cue, and you could have got anybody to stand up and just read it out.
But when there were points during the speech where he had this kind of baying mob behind him, which sounded more like a far-right rally to me than anything else, and as somebody says here, Maggie in London, that Labour conference turned into a frenzied, angry mob spouting just venom and vile comments about Farage. Desperate? You bet they are. So this is the tolerant left. It's more like the nasty party, absolutely disgraceful and shameful. And that's the thing, you know, when you've got these sort of baying lefties cheering him on, as he says, we will fight with every breath in our body. You know, what do you think that means? Do you think that's incitement to violence? I would say so. Whipping up a crowd like that. If you did that at a rally that was run by Tommy Robinson, they'd be arresting people, right?
Yeah, they did.
They didn't arrest anybody yesterday, did they?
No.
Two-tier Keir strikes again, 6:27.
will cause more division on the street. As you said, Charlie Kirk, what happened in America? And it doesn't seem to have affected them, does it? Because, you know, they see us as somebody on the bottom of their shoe. I think that is a problem with Labour.
And they also...
They look down on people, but they're looking down at their own voters who's flocking to reform. You know, this is regular people who's come into reform because they're sick of the Labour government, they're sick of the Conservative.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:30. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. It's the 1st of October, ladies and gentlemen. It's Wednesday. Theo Usherwood is here. We're poring over the remains of what can only be described as Keir Starmer's political career, which he finally kiboshed yesterday, in my view, as he clings on to dear life to try and hang around for another few months to see whether anything gets any better. It seems to be their strategy now. I don't think it will do. Let's get a voice note from Tony.
Morning, Mike. It's Tony from Nottingham. Yeah, I think it's even more sinister than that. We've seen in America, haven't we, recently with the attempted Trump assassinations or the death of Charlie Kirk, what this sort of language can end up leading to. It can end up painting a target on people's backs, can't it? Like Nigel Farage or other people. He's already had milkshake and stuff chucked at him. Then keep chucking these words around, could have real world consequences, and we all know the result of what could happen. I think it's sinister and dangerous, and I think it's deliberate. Thanks.
Tony, thank you very much indeed. So a lot of people think that way, and you know, it's hard to dissuade them of thinking that way. One sort of word, I suppose, of a pity should we issue to Kemi Badenoch and the Tories, because I think Keir Starmer barely mentioned them yesterday.
No.
Front page of the Express today, I think they're on a mission to try and get a 0 rating for their number of sales today. Kemi Badenoch says only the Tories can take the tough decisions. Britain needs attacks. She attacks dangerous Labour and warns Nigel Farage would blow up the economy. I can clean up the almighty mess as next Prime Minister, she says. I mean, I don't think anybody cares, do they?
No.
You know,
no,
we'll see.
I mean, they're done, and you know, we turn over to, you know, got a double-page spread on page, 4 and 5, and it's just, it's over.
Yeah.
And when you speak to Tories, and I was speaking to a couple just recently, and they're so frustrated because there were just a couple of young guys who are councillors, and they were making the point that Kemi Badenoch just wants to have this consultation about everything. We're going to have a consultation around that. We're going to get to ideas. These poor guys, they've got to go out and knock on doors, and they go, "Hi, I'm your local Conservative councillor," and they have nothing to say. And they go, "Okay," and the person turns around and goes, "I'm voting Reform."
Yeah.
And then what do they say?
The end.
The end. That's the end of the conversation. Thanks, bye.
Walk back down the path.
And they realise the only way to save, their fledgling political careers is to defect.
Yeah.
And that's what they're all doing.
And that's what they're going to do. Yeah. Let's have a look at what Shabana Mahmood had to say yesterday about Nigel Farage.
Do you think Nigel Farage is racist?
I think that Nigel Farage is actually almost worse than that. I think he knows exactly what he's doing. I think he's being extremely cynical. He knows that with some of the policies he's put forward, which are on indefinite leave to remain, for example, immoral and, in my view, extreme, he is sending that dog whistle to every racist in the land, but he wants to retain some respectability for himself whilst he does it, and that's what we're challenging.
Do you think he is racist himself?
Look, it's for Nigel Farage to explain who and what he is. I'm saying I can see that behaviour. No, I can see. No, I can see the behaviour that he's indulging in, and I'm calling it out.
So I thought
well, she's not calling it out, is she? Because she's not saying whether she thinks he's a racist. She says he's worse than a racist. So what does that mean? Like a murderer? A rapist? What does she mean by that?
I don't.
And then she claims that she's sending out a message to all the racists in the land. How many racists does she think there are in the land? These people are off the scale.
I don't
They're
get
so
that
dangerous, these people. They literally live in a world of their own. There's some funny clips which we're going to show later on when the speech is being made, and you can see them all, all the kind of the front bench are all sitting watching him, and they're all looking around like really nervously to see what people's reaction is before they do anything. There's one particular section where Rachel Reeves looks like she wants to stand up, but she's not sure if nobody else is standing. Oh, better not stand up. Yeah. They're really strange people. And I think they're quite weird people. And whereas Nigel Farage and Reform, and I was at the Reform conference, and I've been to political conferences before, and I said before, there was nothing like any political conference. But all the people there were sort of normal. And that's the thing that makes them different. Because you go to these things, and there's nobody normal.
No, the conferences...
They're all weirdos.
Well,
they are. They really are. I mean, you're on a borderline with them, so I know you don't want to fall out with any of them. Because you're a bit of a political anorak, right?
Okay.
But you're not enough of a weirdo to be in the Labour
No,
movement.
I couldn't. No.
But you know what I mean.
Yeah. Look,
you know
it is fair to say that people who attend political conferences, they are a bit
weird.
Yeah.
Weird. No, I can use another word if you want.
Can I say odd?
Odd, yeah.
Odd. They're not necessarily
they're not
sort
normal.
of people you'd.
They're not normal people, are they?
Not normal. Not normal.
They're really not. They're not. They're not like the people you meet at a pub. They're not like the people you meet on the train or on a bus or just standing around. You know.
Yeah, but that is what I would also say is that isn't just Labour. Tories can be.
Tories are the same.
They can be weird too.
I give you that.
Yeah.
All I'm saying,
especially when they're in packs.
All I'm saying is that at Reform, these were ordinary people. Couples who had come together, people who had paid money to be members of Reform, people who just live ordinary lives, have regular jobs. They're not, anoraks. They don't have their day peppered with emails from central office, reading policy documents. They're not like that. They just want to get on with their lives. Let's go to David Lammy, though, because people may have seen this already, but here is probably one of the most ridiculous things that one of the most ridiculous people in politics has ever said.
I will leave it for the public to come to their own judgments about someone who once flirted with Hitler Youth when he was younger. That is for the public.
Once flirted with Hitler Youth when he was younger. As people pointed out, there was no such thing as Hitler Youth when he was younger because he wasn't around when Hitler Youth was a thing. You can see what he's trying to do. Again, just trying to throw some mud, hoping that it might stick so that somebody will go, oh yeah, but David Lammy said he was in Hitler Youth, because that's what he thinks they'll remember. But here's Lammy apologising after obviously being wrapped across the knuckles even by his boss Starmer.
He has denied it, and so I accept that he has denied it, and I would like to clarify that position because in the end the Prime Minister was keen for us to focus on the policies, not the individual.
Yeah, so he could have said I apologise, but he didn't actually say those words, did he?
Sorry, no.
Sorry, not
but
sorry.
But if you're gonna, if you're gonna try and land a punch,
absolute plonker.
If you're going to try and land a punch, you've got to hit the target. You can't miss.
Yeah.
Because if you miss, then you just ends up happening.
It just
and
looks
it's
really
excruciating.
It looks really stupid, doesn't it? Pathetic. Yeah. And that's the trouble. I mean, these are the people.
He's Deputy Prime Minister.
These are the people who are running the country. I mean, that's the frightening bit.
Yeah.
You know, because you wonder if that's what they say in public. What do they say in private? What do they really think? And you know what Starmer really thinks.
Yeah.
Starmer thinks Nigel Farage is a racist. Starmer thinks that he is God's gift to democracy and fairness and morality. What's moral about taking freebies from people? What's moral about lying about things? What's moral about being, two-faced and changing your view on absolutely everything? He used to be Jeremy Corbyn's mate, and then he said, "Oh, he was never really my friend."
But there's always been if you understand, and I've spent a long time covering the Corbyn era, the Miliband era, going back to Gordon Brown, even a bit of Tony Blair. But what you have to understand is there is this. It runs through the Labour Party like blue colouring through a stick of rock. This righteousness that we can do it, that we can say these things, but you can't.
Yeah, right.
We can.
Yeah, but they're horrible people
because we are.
They're ghastly, vicious, nasty individuals, right? Who hate anybody who doesn't agree with them. I'm afraid that's the way they are, and that's what they're now. And they're now showing that. Somebody put out a meme yesterday. The definition of racism is now anybody who doesn't agree with the Labour Party, because that's kind of what they're saying. They're like, if you don't agree with us, you're racist.
Yeah, there's probably fair.
Yeah, I think so. Beck says, morning, Mike. Margaret, currently in Tunisia. Please go easy on Theo this morning. Listen, Theo can take it by his own admission. He's fine. Charles from Thailand. I can't stand hearing Starmer's voice. Could you dub his voice with someone else like they used to do with Jerry Adams? Do you remember that? When he wasn't allowed on the airwaves.
MI5.
Unbelievable. Alan with a voice note here.
Morning, Mike. Alan from Swansea. What an absolute disgusting man that Starmer is. What he'll do now, he'll do a massive U-turn as per usual. He'll say, I didn't read the speech before I said it, and I didn't know what I was saying. He's like a Dalek, and he got zero credibility, calling everybody racist. I'm ex-army, 10 years, mate. I'm proud of my country. I ain't got a racist bone in my body. And millions are like me and are thinking, what on earth is this character on about? And Lamy talking about Hitler Youth? Surely this is hate speech. Keep up the great show, buddy. Shut
Alan, thanks very much. Alan in Swansea, they're talking absolute sense. Well, indeed. I mean, talking about hate speech, like I said, I mean, that sort of rah-rah, you know, let's all stand up and fight Nigel Farage. I mean, you know, that's pretty insightful stuff. Let's have a look at what Diane Abbott said on Newsnight last night.
He's only got 5 MPs, and the danger is, I'm all for people giving him a good kicking, where Streeting did that this morning.
Yeah, interesting language. I know she doesn't mean a physical kicking, but, you know, they don't, you know, the way that they would hold, if somebody said that about Starmer, can you imagine if some Reform MP had gone, if Lee Anderson had gone on and said, what we need to do is give Keir Starmer a good kicking. Yeah. Can you imagine the reaction to that? She says, I'm all for giving Nigel Farage a good kicking. I know she doesn't mean kicking him, but they would do that. They would take that, they would run with it, they would seek to get people, you know, out of office.
But we know, you know, this is something that goes back, you know, to, you know, Boris Johnson and the furore over flat.
But the public have had enough of it now. The public have had enough.
And then they go and, you know, Keir Starmer goes and claims all that money for his spectacles and his suits
and his free Taylor Swift tickets. And his wife's underwear and God knows what else he got from Lord Ali, and his free pair of blue Adidas shoes so that he can look just like his idol. I mean, you know, do me a favour. It's 6:41. We've got to take a break. We're back after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:43. I'm Mike Graham. Theo Usherwood is here, of course. One thing that we haven't mentioned yet is, because it has gone away a little bit, is the whole Morgan McSweeney scandal. A piece written in the National yesterday that says Labour Together, which is the organisation, the think tank that was in receipt of 740,000 quid that wasn't declared, hired private investigators to dig for dirt on Paul Holden, who's the guy that's written this new book about the McSweeney affair with you know, Keir Starmer at the heart of it and all. It's called The Fraud, and how they've sort of, you know, somehow managed to take control of the Labour movement. So lots of dirt still kind of swirling around that particular story, you know.
There's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot to come out from this. Already, there have been a couple of stories that have come out from this book, and the allegation is that they basically hired private investigators to look into to look into Paul Holden, who is the author of this book, The Fraud, which of course exposes the Morgan McSweeney funding scandal. That, I think, is a story that's going to run and run. And just to Dan Hodges' point you were mentioning earlier, it will be, that's a crucial moment, the moment that McSweeney goes. Morgan McSweeney leaves Number 10. We've spoken about it before. He's obviously this is his.
He'll
project.
have to go, won't he?
He'll have to go, and then in the same way that when Theresa May, fumbled that election so badly back in 2017 and had to get rid of her chief of staff, Fiona Hill and Nick Timothy, that was the end of the project. Yeah. That's the kind of line where you go, right, finished. Right. And you got it wrong. You got it right. That's it. It's done. And then it's just a holding pattern. Yeah. Then until, at the moment, yes, you could probably argue that Keir Starmer could salvage it. I personally don't think he can. No. But once McSweeney goes, then it's just a holding pattern until they pick somebody else to take over. Yeah. And I think from Farage's point of view, that's the bit when he can. I honestly believe this. I don't say this lightly, but I think Farage can go past 45 points in the polls. I think he can win an absolute landslide at the next election. Because and I'm not even talking about having to rely on the Conservatives one iota. I mean, that joke of I like the journalist at the Express. Once a great newspaper, but like putting Kemi Badenoch on your front page saying I want to be PM
on a day like today,
just not going to happen. No, but. I think when Labour will then retreat to its comfort zone, it will become incredibly left-wing. I think there'll be much more pain for people. Yeah. And the
economy will be in all sorts of trouble.
The economy will go down, literally go down the pothole.
We've got the Telegraph this morning saying confidence of bosses hits a record low. Business confidence has plunged to a record low ahead of the budget as Rachel Reeves prepares a fresh wave of tax rises. If you'd watched her yesterday, you would have thought everything in the garden was rosy. Yeah. She talks as though the economy's fine. It isn't.
But the markets, for the market, I completely agree with that. But for the markets, at least they know Rachel Reeves. At least they know there's a sensible part to it. You think somebody like Andy Burnham or Angela Rayner coming into Number 10, who they'd put in the Treasury, what could happen? Yeah. And I think that will be...
And that's frightening for the city, and that's frightening for the markets. Let's have a look at Wes Streeting yesterday, because he suggested exactly that. Check it out.
Who's made a real difference too, who understands the struggle care workers face because she was one. She brought that experience to the cabinet table.
We'll back to that one in a minute. Morning, Mike, says Glyn from Bolton. That wasn't a dog two-tier Keith had, it was a small donkey from his field. Great show, keeps me sane. And we still haven't had the answers on that, by the way, because he lied, in my view, in a sort of what you might call a sort of specifically knowledgeable, lawyerly way, when he said, I did not create a trust. He used the words very carefully to Laura Kuenssberg, I did not create a trust, because he didn't have to, because by doing what he did, the trust was already created, if you know what I mean. So it would have been wrong for him to say it was not in a trust. The fact is it was. He's just said, I didn't create a trust. And that's the problem with lawyers and reality, because he thinks he's staying on the right side of the rules, but he's coming across as a hypocrite and a liar.
Yeah, of course, because we've seen what's happened. This is a prime minister and his chancellor. Close the loopholes that are going to affect millions of business. Well, maybe not millions, but certainly hundreds a lot of businesses up and down the country where there's a loophole for a specific reason to keep farming in this country, and that has a direct, just by the by, that has a direct impact on our food supply chain, which is incredible, and our independence.
And there are farmers outside conference up there, campaigning for against the government's policy on their inheritance tax rules.
That loophole exists for a very important reason. And he's got a field full of
donkeys,
and it doesn't exist to get around, being able to sell, being able to keep,
or to use cute, lawyerly phrases like "I didn't create a trust."
Reduce the tax liability on a piece of quite valuable land. That's what it doesn't exist for. It exists to protect businesses in this country.
Yeah. And I know enough about tax lawyers, and I speak to enough tax lawyers, and I have done in the past few days, who have told me there's no question that what Starmer did with the donkeys was a tax dodge. Absolutely no question. I think we've got the Wes Streeting clip now. Let's have a look.
Someone else who's made a real difference too, who understands the struggle care workers face because she was one. She brought that experience to the cabinet table as the care worker who became our country's Deputy Prime Minister. Angela Rayner, this achievement is yours. Thank you. And we want her back as well. We'll definitely make sure she sees that. We need her back.
Yeah, we need her back, he says, which tells you a lot more about the state of the party than anything, right? Because if you need Angela Rayner back with her 3 houses and her dodgy tax forms and her ridiculous trusts, because everybody seems to have a trust in the Labour government.
Yeah.
You know, I said yesterday to Peter Kyle, he was being interviewed by Jack Elsom, I said, can you ask Peter Kyle, please, because he won't talk to me directly, if he has anything in trust. And he didn't answer the question. All he said was, I know that Keir Starmer's very good at looking after his family. That was his answer. So I'm going to ask, whenever they do come on, I don't suppose it will be very often, I'm going to ask every single cabinet minister, have you got anything in a trust? And see what they say.
That clip is... I don't think you'll get a straight answer.
Well, have they all got things in trust? I mean, are we all missing something here? Is that what they do now? They put everything in trust so they don't pay any tax?
It's hypocrisy. And
of course it is.
It's hypocrisy. And it doesn't... The thing about... What really gets my goat just about this is, you know, this use of trust is that is the tax dodge.
Right.
That's why they're closing the loophole
to
stop doing what they did.
Right.
The loophole actually exists for a really important reason. That's because you can't, you know, when you have a large farm, you are not cash rich or you are asset rich. And if you want to keep that farm and keep producing food that is used in this country so that we have that independence and not have to sell it off, you need to be able to not pay inheritance tax because you can't afford it because you don't have the money in the bank.
Exactly.
Because farms operate on very small margins. And that's why the loophole exists. And yet they use the same, and it appears they all using the same, or certainly Keir Starmer has used that loophole for the particular reason they want to close it for.
And then, of course, he spent the other part of the interview saying, oh, it was only 20,000. But at the time, in 1996, 20,000 was more than the annual wage of the average salary in this country.
Yeah.
And so he was, again, showing his complete incoherence when it comes to people's ordinary struggles and people's ordinary lives.
Yeah.
Let's get this from Terry in Slough. Mike, I'm in my 70s, and this joke of a Prime Minister is the worst I've seen in my lifetime. And I've seen some terrible ones. I wouldn't trust this useless, incompetent Labour government to run a bath, never mind this great country of ours. And Kevin in Southampton, the masks of this commie government are truly off now. If they think waving flags will fool us, think again. They are just a shambles. And that's what people are saying. Voice note from Marco's. I think we need another break, don't we? Let's take Marco.
Mike, every sovereign nation has policies to protect its borders. To call a firm's proposals racist is just like blatant hypocrisy, because existing UK policies already treat non-citizens differently. Higher fees for foreign students, visa restrictions such as no recourse for public funds, and then there's the £1,000, I think it's more now, for the NHS levy for people who stay over 6 months. These are long-standing lawful policies. They're not racism.
Of course it's not. It's not racism at all. We'll come back. Theo, I know you've got things to say. Theo Usherwood's here. I'm Mike Graham. It's 52 minutes past 6. We are, of course, the home of common sense.
Well, as far as I'm aware, Nigel wouldn't have been old enough to be in the Hitler Youth, so I think David Lammy probably needs a history lesson. But again, here we go again. This is the point, which is actually this is guttural politics. And whilst he thinks it's very clever, actually, what this is doing is sowing division and it's sowing societal fracturing. And I think they need to be very careful about what they are doing, because they are alienating huge chunks of this country.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to very nearly 3 minutes to 7. Well, we've nearly done a whole hour. It's October the 1st, of course. We are back right here with Morning Glory at the home Common Sense. Theo Rushwood's here. Just a couple of other stories away from the Labour Party conference, because, I mean, we can get a bit bogged down in that. Don't worry, there's going to be plenty of it over the next 3 hours. Don't worry. Fat generals are going to be ousted from the Pentagon and all staff weighed twice a year under Donald Trump's new-look Department of War. Pete Hegseth is, of course, the Defence Secretary. Here he is talking about clamping down on DEI.
No more identity months, DEI offices, dudes in dresses. No more climate change worship. No more division, distraction, or gender delusions. No more debris. As I've said before, and will say again, we are done with that.
That's what I call proper government, you know. No more dudes in dresses. Do you remember Biden had a Secretary of State for Defence who was a dude in a dress? Yeah, it was like Admiral somebody or other, and who came to work dressed as a woman.
I didn't know.
You never saw that?
No.
Oh my God!
That one
I mean, I was thinking to myself. I mean, I'm not joking. I mean, I'll find the picture.
I like the idea of weighing staff to make sure they're fit. A serious point, though.
Weighing staff.
Because you're setting, if you're a general, you're setting the example.
Yeah.
I always remember, do you remember there was a Metropolitan Police Commissioner called Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe?
Yes, I do remember him.
And he prided himself on the fact that he was fitter than most of his police constables. Yeah. And so he would go to, if I remember this correctly, he would go down to the Hendon training base or whatever. And you have that test where you have to run beep tests.
Right.
Where you have to run between the beep. And if the beep goes before you got to the point, then you lose the test. And he would beat the recruits on it. Right. And he was, of course, the commissioner, and he was in his 50s, 60s. I don't want to do him a disservice. But he always prided himself on the fact
which is all very well. That's all fine and dandy, but then what he should have done is then gone, now I'm not having any of you in this police force until you can beat me. That's the whole point of it, surely. You know? That's what he should have done.
Yeah, but then we wouldn't have any police officers, would we?
Well, I mean, there's not much point having a police officer that can't run after a burglar. How about this one? This will sum up DEI for you, and this is the Church of England, right? A woman who fled to Britain from Iran at the age of 14 is one of at least 2 female bishops shortlisted to be the new Archbishop of Canterbury. Now, I know what people will say. They'll say, well, why can't she be the Archbishop of Canterbury? Well, there will some people who will say, well, maybe she shouldn't be one because she's not a bloke. I don't really care whether the bishop is a man or a woman. But I do think the bishop of the highest church in the land, of the Church of England, should probably be somebody who didn't come here from another country.
Yes, this is Reverend Guli Francis Dakani, Bishop of Chelmsford. She arrived in this country having fled as a refugee from the Islamic Revolution in 1979, and she's amongst the shortlist. And of course, the Church of England has come under sustained
It's so woke. The other woman on the list is a former chief nursing officer of the Department of Health. I mean, it's not very godlike, is it? Anyway, Theo, thanks very much. Good to see you. We'll be back with Isabel Oakeshott after the news.
Majesty. Melania and I are deeply grateful to you and Queen Camilla for your extraordinary graciousness. And to William and Kate, thank you so much. It's been so great being with you today. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's a singular privilege to be the first American president welcomed here. The phrase special relationship, seen from American eyes, the word special does not begin to do it justice. We're joined by history and fate, and by love and language. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be with you.
Security remains the cornerstone of this special relationship. We have the deepest, most advanced defense relationship in the world.
As I said last night, the bond between our countries is like no other anywhere in the world. The United States and the United Kingdom have done more good on this planet than any two nations in human history.
We are working together to end the humanitarian catastrophe in the Middle East.
The one that I thought would be easiest would be because of my relationship with President.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It is, of course, the home of common sense. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 7. It's Wednesday, the 1st of October, the first of the month. Incredibly, we seem to have crossed not only into a new month, but we've crossed over into a new era of politics. Because, ladies and gentlemen, as I said at the top of the show at 6 o'clock, we have entered a place where I never thought Keir Starmer would take us. You know, we know how useless he is. We know how incompetent the government has been. We know how flip-floppy he is on changing his mind. But what we didn't expect him to do was to take politics into the gutter, which is what he stands accused of doing this morning by several newspapers, including the Daily Mail. The day Labour dragged politics into the gutter. Desperate Keir Starmer accuses Nigel Farage of not liking Britain, one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard a British Prime Minister say about anybody. David Lammy ludicrously calls Reform's leader somebody who flirted with the Hitler Youth. 20 minutes later, he was forced to apologise because even Keir Starmer thought that was beyond the pale. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage has responded by accusing the Prime Minister of inciting the radical left in a very dangerous manner, and I think he's absolutely right about that in the wake of the assassination of Charlie Kirk in the United States of America, because people didn't like what he said, they didn't agree with what he said, so they thought it was okay to kill him. He also says that Nigel Farage says that Keir Starmer is no longer fit to hold public office, and I think he's absolutely right about that. Judging by your reaction this morning, people are disgusted with Keir Starmer. People think that he has sunk to such a new low that Labour really should be punished at the ballot box at the next election, which is coming up in May. There's already a by-election coming up in Wales for the Senedd, funnily enough, in Caerphilly, I think, which Reform are likely to win. Keir Starmer is going to have his backside handed to him by Nigel Farage in May of next year. If he is still the leader, I'm not sure he will be, but already people are saying, well, he might have made a speech that pleased the baying crowds and the baying mob inside the Liverpool Conference Centre, but what he hasn't done is made anybody have any sort of view of him other than one of absolute and utter disgust and disgrace, because that, I'm afraid, is where the Labour Party stands right now at this time in the morning. Let's get a voice note from Liam.
Good morning, Mike. It's Liam in Folkestone. I wonder if this is what went on behind closed doors yesterday. Here we go. What we have to do for the great renewal of this country is to ban talk and ban Mike Graham and all of his listeners, because they're all racists. Cheers.
Liam, thank you very much indeed. I'm sure that those are the conversations that they have. Don't forget, Keir Starmer's out and about this morning doing the rounds, probably trying to justify lighting the blue touch paper, as I said yesterday on Twitter, to try and actually rise people up, to try and tell people that they have to fight the fascist right, the fact that they have to fight Nigel Farage and Reform. What do you think that effect is going to have on the mad lefties of this world, the people who quite happily throw milkshakes over Nigel Farage, quite happily throw bricks at him when he's out in public? 0344 499 1000. And what about the other supporters? Are they all racist? Of course they're not. This is Morning Glory. As I said, the Labour government don't like talking to me. They don't like talking to me on this show. They talk to some people on Talk, just not me. I don't know what it is. I don't really care, quite frankly. We had Peter Kyle on yesterday talking via Jack Elsom as though he needed some kind of interpreter because he couldn't quite handle a question from me. I asked one question, which was, does he have a trust or any property in any trust? Because that seems to be the way to go these days if you're a Labour politician. And guess what? He didn't answer the question. Sean in Gloucester says this: so Keith Starling's true colours have been exposed yet again with his vile and stupid attack on Nigel Farage and his supporters. I've had enough of being called a far-right racist thug by these cretins. It seems to me that Starling has realised he has already lost. We need an election now. And I think most people, most right-thinking people in this country, most ordinary people who simply want to see controlled immigration and a proper border force that stops people breaking into this country illegally and then raping our women, I think that's a pretty normal position to hold. Isabel Oakeshott, very good morning to you. Talks International Editor joins us.
Good morning, right. Well, I like talking to you, and I also love the word cretin, which I haven't heard for a while, and perfectly sums up so many of the cabinet. I'm still kind of processing everything that happened yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really remarkable in so many ways, wasn't it?
It was.
Keith Starmer's speech was sort of okay. I mean, the most interesting bit of it is what we've been discussing, you know, the absolute fixation with Nigel Farage and his supporters. But what really took that to the stratospheric political level was Nigel Farage's masterful reaction.
Yeah.
I mean, bear in mind, he won't have seen Starmer's speech. He had to basically ad-lib that, and it was absolutely pitch perfect, I think, for what he aimed to achieve, which was to steal Starmer's thunder.
Well, I think there's no question that Keir Starmer has made, of all of his political blunders in his career, and certainly since he's become Prime Minister, this is by far and away the biggest, because to call an entire nation of people who vote for a different party to yours racist, which is what he's effectively done, he's more or less handed the election to Reform, hasn't he?
Well, of course, Reform would like to think that and probably felt that yesterday. But, you know, as we come back time and again to the reality that there are 3 years and 9 months till the next election, likely, you know, it doesn't, nothing's a dead cert, is it? I mean, I do find it so hard to imagine that Starmer could possibly lead the Labour Party to what would be certain electoral doom. And yet when you talk to Labour types, the types of people that were in that hall yesterday, they still think the guy is impressive. I mean, these are people who don't get out enough, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I remember Paul Mason on Sunday, because this is where it all started. If I can take you back to Sunday morning's interview with Laura Kuenssberg, when he first, and I think mistakenly and probably without being told to do so, basically answered Laura Kuenssberg's question, you know, do you think Reform's policies on immigration are racist? He said, yes, I think they were racist and immoral. That was the beginning of it, right? Paul Mason, you know, that sort of sometime Labour candidate, sometime economics editor of Channel 4 and the BBC, and sort of general left-wing nutter, came out and went, oh, I thought Keir Starmer was very impressive, fantastic, very strong, answered all the questions. And I'm going, are you watching a different programme? You know, it's absolutely unbelievable.
I think that there's some complete delusion at the top of the party and within the party machine and amongst the type of people that turn up to party conferences. I mean, I think it was Kev said to me yesterday, they're in a blind panic, aren't they? And I thought, no, the problem is they're not in a panic. They think this is all fine and that, you know, that the vast majority of the country is with them. And they think that if they press that button which bleeps and says racist, then somehow or other that garners huge support. But, you know, you've got to remember when you're a political leader or any prominent politician giving a speech at a venue like that your real audience is not the audience in the room. It's ordinary folk at home who are only going to listen to a clip of it. You know, you got to think, and they sort of know this in their heads, which are the few seconds of this that are actually going to be played on the radio, on the BBC, on all the other stations. That's all people are going to hear.
Exactly right. Well, let's have a look at some of the things he did say in sort of the calmness of the next day, the morning after. This is him talking about racism.
Our flags flying proudly as we celebrate difference and oppose racism. we can all see that the country faces a choice, a defining choice. Britain stands at a fork in the road. We can choose decency, or we can choose division, renewal or decline. A country proud of its values, in control of its future.
Yeah, he talks about values, and yet, as I've said this morning, you know, what sort of values do you have to go after pensioners who want £300 for winter fuel allowance, which is less than half of a taxi fare for a migrant to go and see a doctor in Newcastle from Folkestone? How is that in any way a moral value? What about taking farmers' inheritance tax loophole away so that basically at least one farmer has committed suicide, several are going to lose their livelihoods and their family fortunes over the course of time? You know, in what way is it of moral value to Britain to give away the Chagos Islands and give so much money to Mauritius that they don't have to pay any income tax anymore? You know, the list goes on and on and on. And I find it quite objectionable that people like that think that they somehow occupy the moral high ground.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I think the values are very questionable of prioritising outsiders, people who we have no idea who they are and what their background is, prioritising their needs over the people of our own nation, who have their heritage in the UK, have made a contribution one way or another, many of them all their lives. You know, I'm thinking about veterans, for example, that are so often to be found sleeping rough on our streets while migrants are in luxury hotels. That is not the kind of values that I would be boasting about. No. And I think this whole suggestion that reform is only negative. I mean, it's so easy to level that critique at a party that is continually highlighting Labour's own failings. It's not that reform doesn't love Britain, that Nigel Farage hates Britain and just is a counsel of despair. It is that reform and Nigel Farage do not like Britain as it is now and want to set it on a different course.
Exactly right, because the course that it's currently on is one which has been made much, much worse by this Labour government. And let's not forget, Keir Starmer has said in the past, in his own words, he prefers Davos to Westminster. You know, he's far more interested in a global agenda and the European Union. He would rather we were part of a European superstate than he is likely to want to have an independent UK. You know, how does that make him a nationalist? It doesn't. It makes him a man who doesn't really care about Britain and its borders, and it doesn't really care about its identity, it seems to me.
It makes him a supranationalist. You know, this is somebody who is very, very comfortable among those left-leaning global elite. And, you know, this is Brexit all over again, with a hell of a long build-up. And if you actually think about the parallels with Brexit, you know, the Farage's very old party, it's been through multiple incarnations since it was UKIP. But UKIP was creating merry hell for the then Tory government back in 2013, 2014. That's why David Cameron offered the referendum. The reason I bring this up is I'm just thinking about timeframes here. So there was another 2 or 3 years before there was an actual referendum, and look what happened. So maybe that suggests to us that, you know, reform won't just blow up, it will continue building momentum, and certainly a few more speeches like that from our Prime Minister will only fuel the fire.
Right. And as I've been saying this morning, you know, it's what they say in public gives you some impression of what they're like, but imagine what they must say in private. Have a look at what Shabana Mahmood had to say yesterday about Nigel Farage.
Do you think Nigel Farage is racist?
I think that Nigel Farage is actually almost worse than that. I think he knows exactly what he's doing. I think he's being extremely cynical. He knows that with some of the policies he's put forward, which are on indefinite leave to remain, for example, immoral and, in my view, extreme, he is sending that dog whistle to every racist in the land, but he wants to retain some respectability for himself whilst he does it, and that's what we're challenging.
Do you think he is racist himself?
Look, it's for Nigel Farage to explain who and what he is. I'm saying I can see that behaviour. No, I can see. No, I can see the behaviour that he's indulging in, and I'm calling it out.
So she thinks that it's her, you know, a duty, if you like, to call out his behaviour, which she says is worse than racist. I don't know what worse than racist is in her mind, but she's the Home Secretary of this country.
I mean, don't you cringe at this expression, calling it out?
Yeah, I know.
what is that all about?
Right.
That she was quite clearly saying, you know, she didn't want to use the words, and I don't really know why, because she was saying he's worse than that. But I think this just reminds us that this supposedly hard as nails Home Secretary doesn't subscribe to the agenda for sorting out our immigration crisis that is being put forward by Reform. Even though she's trying to ape it, she's trying to pretend that she's on that side. I just don't really believe she is. I mean, this is somebody who's been on the beaches of, I think it was Lampedusa or somewhere,
Greece or something, wasn't it? Yeah.
You know, saying welcome refugees, you poor things. Well, yeah, you know, some of them are poor things, but that is not the kind of attitude that is going to grip our own catastrophe.
No, exactly. And we've seen Lucy Powell in the past, who's about to become the new deputy leader, which is going to put more pressure on Starmer, by the way. So if he thinks he's done all right by getting a few standing ovations in conference, you know, the troubles are going to come his way very soon. Lucy Powell had to resign as a result of some of the things that she said, not least accusing Tim Montgomery of using dog whistle politics when he mentioned grooming gangs. I mean, you know, how about that? I mean, what happened to the AI conversation from Friday? You know, they obviously launched into that because they were worried that that the Morgan McSweeney story is spinning out of control. They were worried about the donkey sanctuary story spinning out of control. They suddenly announced this ID card situation, which wasn't even mentioned in the speech yesterday.
Gone very quiet, hasn't it?
Gone very quiet. He's also, you know, he's gone very quiet on the grooming gangs inquiry, which was meant to be being done. You know, they talk about fairness, but obviously they don't mean fairness to everybody. They mean fairness to the people that they approve of. Lucy Powell said quite openly on a TV programme some months ago that immigrants and illegal migrants have more rights than we do.
Yeah, I remember that. It's all incredibly depressing, isn't it? And I just don't know how much damage is going to be done by these policies in the time that they've got left in power. I don't think a change of Prime Minister will make anything any better. We've got this horrendous budget looming. They're all over the place on some of this stuff. You know, you mentioned ID cards. I'm going to stick my neck out right now, and I actually said it a few days ago. ID cards is not going to happen.
I agree with you. Totally agree.
I'm not aware of any policy that garnered that many, however many million signatures it is, on these Downing Street petitions. I don't know how many we're up to. Do you?
I think it's close to 3 million. I think.
Yeah, I've never known that happen with the policy. I just can't see that they're going to be able to press ahead with that, because what they'll get is mass civil disobedience. Now, you know, I've got my own views on how ID cards can be useful, but I've always said not under this lot. You know, give these people a little bit of power and they just cannot help themselves. They always overreach. Yeah. So that's not going to happen. It seems that putting VAT on private healthcare is not going to happen. I mean, thank God for that. You know, that was. Let's not forget, that was on the front pages of the papers yesterday. Somebody flew that kite, didn't they?
They did.
And quickly pulled the kite back in because it is clearly insane when you've got a struggling NHS to punish people that out of their own pockets pay not to use it. What kind of politics is that?
It's bonkers. I'm going to finish up with my favourite picture of the day today. I don't know if you've seen probably a hard copy of the Daily Mail today, but on pages 8 and 9, if you look closely, there's a picture of Lord Ali, who's back at conference. And if you look closely, he's wearing a pair of blue Adidas shoes with 3 white stripes. And then there's a picture of Keir Starmer with his wife wearing the exact same shoes.
No.
I mean, you could not make this stuff up, right? And he's also holding a dog which has been given to him by somebody else to look like he's holding a dog. So he's got a fake dog, he's got Lord Ali's shoes on, he's wearing the same trousers as Lord Ali, the same jacket, more or less the same shirt as well, same look. I mean, it's like mini-me. What's he doing?
I don't know, but more to the point, what's his wife doing? She looks absolutely lovely, and my God, she's sticking with it, isn't she? I wonder how long that will last. The sacrifices she's having to make, but she played her part and she looked great, and I very much doubt she was wearing anyone else's shoes.
Yeah, I very much doubt it. Although, to be fair, Lord Ali bought some stuff for her as well, didn't he? But we shall see. Isabel, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor there. Let's get a voice note from Becky.
Hi, Mike. It's Becky here from Yorkshire. Great show as always. Well, in the last 14 months, I've never been insulted as much as I have. I've been called far right, fascist, racist. Oh, one above being a skinhead. I think that was the latest one. I mean, come on, these guys haven't got a clue what it means to be a patriot of this country. And that's what really, really frustrates me. It's just virtual signalling. And I think he's really, really wound up people to a real extent. But I also think it's dangerous rhetoric, really, really dangerous. He needs to really think about what he's saying, because this is Charlie Kirk territory, and that's really, really quite frightening.
It is, Becky, you're absolutely right. Shocking state of affairs. They wheeled out Pat McFadden again this morning, by the way, which means that they know they're in trouble, because that's what they always do. A couple of more texts and tweets for you. You can text us, of course, at 87222. Find us at talkTV. Mahmood says Nigel Farage is worse than a racist. So is she comparing him to rapists, paedophiles, murderers, who are the only people I can think of who are worse than racists, says Lee from Northampton. Katie says, on Shabana Mahmood, what on earth? Worse than a racist? What would that be then? And Stephen says in Belfast, Mike, 3 years ago, the loony left at conference would have clapped and cheered after Starmer and Cooper would have said we need to welcome immigrants with open arms, and their biggest policy was a woman can have a penis. Now they clap and cheer a version of Reform's policies, and they snigger by using the word racist glibly. The left flip-flop all the time. Well, they do. This is how pathetic it all is. Absolutely and utterly ridiculous. And it still hasn't changed a thing. Keir Starmer is the most unpopular Prime Minister in the history of time. He's the most unpopular leader that the Labour Party have ever had. And if he thinks that by throwing a few insults at the good people of this great country of ours and calling them all racist, if he thinks that's going to improve his lot, then I've got some swampland in Florida to sell him. This is Talk.
It's not about how much money we pour into the NHS, it's about spending it right. We've spent 40 billion into the NHS in the past few years and much worse outcomes.
No, 40 billion is just the top up.
We can't just keep pouring money into it endlessly without expecting any change or reform in many things. You know, there's a huge managerial level layer that can be removed. For instance, when I was working at the CPS, we had a huge sustainability department that were on double what I was getting paid. We're just lawyers with computers. Why do we need a sustainability department?
Look, I think a lot of people agree with that.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to 7:26 in the morning. We're here, of course, it's the 1st of October. Hard to believe that September just flew in so quickly. If you miss anything, don't forget there's a Morning Glory podcast that comes out every single day around about 10:15, 10:30. We get the best of the show. Front pages this morning very much dominated by Labour dragging politics into the gutter. It's all over the front page of the Mail, the Telegraph as well. I won't surrender our flag. Another picture of Keir Starmer with Mrs Starmer, or Lady Starmer. The Sun has got Starmer versus Farage, no belief in Britain, which is what he accused him of. And of course, the Sun's also got a slightly different big story on the front page, a showbiz story. Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban have lived separate lives for 3 years before she filed for divorce last night, citing irreconcilable differences. There'll be plenty of money swirling around in that particular scenario. We'll talk about that later on. Let's talk about what happened yesterday at Labour Party conference. So Richard Fuller, MP, Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury. Richard, a very good morning to you. Hello, Richard. Are you there? I can hear something, but I can't quite hear a voice. We'll come back to Richard. Let me read you some more of this. Morning, Mike, says Leon. Great show as usual. How does Shabana Mahmood get away with the dog whistle comment you just played, but Lucy Powell was fired? One white MP and one black MP. Sounds like racism from the party crying racism. Yeah, absolutely right. And one from Teresa, who says, Mike, David, the mastermind extraordinaire Lammy, strikes again. Hitler Youth ended in 1945. Farage was born in 1964. Give Lammy Diane Abbott's abacus, please. Teresa, thanks very much indeed. I think we've got Richard Fuller now. Richard, are you there?
Hopefully second time.
Yes,
charm.
Good, excellent, there you are.
Good morning.
Good morning, thank you very much indeed. I've got to ask you, I mean, I've been around politics a reasonable amount of time, probably not quite as steeped in it as you. What did you make of Keir Starmer's speech yesterday? I thought it was quite extraordinary.
I thought it was unseemly, Mike. Yeah. Here we have the Prime Minister of our country with an opportunity to talk to people about the cost of living. Inflation's going up, people are feeling prices, we know taxes are coming, but he didn't do that. What he decided to was basically get into the gutter and do a political brawl with a leader of another political party. It was just, I mean, just so unseemly.
It really was. I mean, one of the newspapers this morning is saying that Labour's dragged politics into the gutter. I fear that's kind of what's happened. I was kind of watching it incredulous yesterday because I couldn't quite believe what I was seeing.
I've been trying to work out what on earth was the advice, what were they giving the advice to the Prime Minister? I mean, just ignore the public, because the most important thing you can do is frame the choice at the next election as about being Labour and reform. That's what you need to do, Prime Minister. And then go from that to that. And the best way to do that is then to attack, through the leader of reform, British people who are concerned about immigration. And that just seems to have been a total misfire. And then you get, a couple of hours later, after David Lammy makes his comments, says, oh, no, I didn't mean it. And then Sir Keir Starmer says, oh, no, I'm not calling people racist. When actually, if you look at the intent of their speech and things that they said, it was completely trying to make that point. So blunder after blunder yesterday by Labour. Yeah, they're trying to be kind of clever about it as well, which I think people find even more distasteful. You know, they're trying to kind of prod you in a direction and then kind of pull themselves out of the back of it. And it's a bit like, somebody driving you to the edge of a cliff and then getting out of the car and saying, here you go, you can take the wheel now. And it's almost as like, it's nothing to do with us, mate, Shabana Mahmood actually said yesterday, when she was asked about Nigel Farage, that she thinks he's worse than a racist. I'm not even sure what that means. I think we've got to be, politicians, whatever your politics are, you've just got to be very careful with your rhetoric, your use of words these days, because it is easy to cause offence and it's easy to misjudge things. And look, I'm a Conservative. I believe the Conservative Party has a right to the policy. I think there are legitimate arguments against reform, but those should be based on the policies of reform, not the personalities or some attempt to describe people who are saying, I think reform's a good choice in the next session, somehow as being out of touch or racist. I mean, for example, reform's policies where it comes to environment fell apart pretty much straight away. Right. You could talk about that. Or you could talk about reforms sort of, from my point of view, too much on favour of benefits for people, who people are not working, not contributing. I think that you can argue about that. You could, if you wanted to, look at some of the immigration policies of reform and talk about that. Not just try and label a party as being racist. That to me was a fundamental misstep, and really the first thing you should learn in politics is never make it personal.
Yeah, exactly
Talk about
right.
the politics, because that's what the people want to hear about. What are your policies? Where do you think things are right? Where do you think things are wrong?
But this is, I think, where their problem lies, because Keir Starmer knows full well, one, he's the most unpopular Prime Minister in the history of time. Two, he's not even that popular in his own party. Only 29% of people think he should be the leader. If there was an election tomorrow for leader of Labour Party, Andy Burnham would beat him hands down. And when you see on the Telegraph front page today, the record business confidence plunging to a record low ahead of the Rachel Reeves budget in November, they don't really want to talk about the policies because they're messing it all up.
Well, look, Keir Starmer clearly was in trouble, and maybe he decided I just want to talk to the faithful so I can shore up my position. But you're exactly what your businesses around the country, what self-employed people, what pensioners, what working people want to hear is, why is it that 1 year after Rachel Reeves saying it's a once in a parliament set of tax increases, not going to happen again, don't worry, we're all talking about the fact she's going to raise taxes again this November. Under Kemi Badenoch, we'd have made different choices if we'd been in power. We'd have not increased taxes on working people. We would have come down harder on productivity in the public sector, and we would have brought forward further efforts on welfare reform. We heard none of that from Labour. So we've got another month or two of uncertainty and doubt in the economy, where everyone knows Rachel Reeves is going to come back to hit people with more taxes, but no one knows who's going to get hit the hardest.
Yeah, exactly right. Richard, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Richard Fuller, CBE MP and Shadow Chief Secretary of the Treasury. As he says, there's a really good reason that Keir Starmer decided to go on the attack personally on Nigel Farage, because at the end of the day, he can't actually defend any of his policies. All they can ever come out with is the success they've had, supposedly, with opening a few breakfast clubs for some kids at school, because apparently that's taking loads of people out of poverty. Let's get a voice note from Tristan.
What Labour did yesterday, what Starmer did yesterday, and what the others have done is been absolutely abhorrent, to be honest with you. Absolutely disgraceful. And the thing is that they always use these divisive words, racist, Nazi, and on our side, reform, they don't do any of that. They actually critique the policies. They don't go for these personal attacks all the time.
Exactly right. Justin in Loughborough says this. Morning, Mike. In basic sales training, they teach you never rubbish your opponents. With Starmer and his cabinet, their continued personal attacks on Nigel and reform shows desperation, unprofessionalism, and it is clear they are simply not fit for office. Shameful to resort to a new low. And this one from Danny, who says, Mike, when Elon Musk spoke about fighting back at the UTK march, he was accused by Starmer of inciting violence. Yet it's okay for Starmer to say, we will fight you with everything we have. What is that if it's not incitement? Well, that's a very good question, and we'll explore that coming up over the course of the show. We're here till 10. Let's talk to Dr. Dean Eggett, though, GP and CEO of Doncaster Local GP Services, because a couple of stories on the health front. We saw yesterday that they were talking about unveiling another 8.5 million appointments for virtual kind of sessions with either doctors and or specialists over the course of the next few years. And also, Wes Streeting telling BMA doctors to pick a side. Because BMA doctors, of course, are saying, if you make it any easier for people to get an appointment with us, we're going to go on strike. Extraordinary. I bet Dr. Dean isn't going to do that. Dean, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
You don't strike me as the kind of guy that would go on strike.
No, that's right. I don't strike. I'm quite happy to follow the letter of the law for my contract, but certainly I won't be striking. And as I've said on this programme before, to reassure patients, GPs can't strike. So GPs tend to be self-employed partners of businesses, and if we strike, essentially what we're doing is we're striking against ourselves. Salaried doctors can strike, but that seems to be self-defeating because it's not really striking against the government, it's striking against your employer, which is fellow GPs. So GPs don't strike, we just change the way in which we work.
Right. Well, the BMA are threatening to do exactly that, though. That's what they were saying in the Telegraph yesterday, if in fact this new method of making appointments comes in, which is what Wes Streeting wants. He wants to make it more modern, make it easier for people to book appointments, and it would effectively look as though the BMA, or certainly part of the BMA, is saying don't make it too easy for people because that will end up making our jobs harder.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's a really difficult one to understand because what we have in the NHS with general practice is this bottleneck at the 8 a.m. We know the 8 a.m. scramble, and we all hate the 8 a.m. scramble, but there is a flip side to that. And the flip side is that it does to a certain extent protect the NHS from people wasting its time. Because if you have a very mild illness, you're not going to stay on the phone in the 8 a.m. scramble trying to get an appointment. So those people tend not to bother trying to get through. But if you're more ill, you do tend to try to get through. And hopefully in some way you do end up with an appointment. Now, look, I'm not defending it. I know the 8 a.m. scramble is absolutely horrendous and we need it to change. But until we have the resources to see everybody that needs to be seen, it's almost impossible. And this is what this new contract is going to change from today. So from today, between the hours of 8 and 6:30, you can access your GP in all the ways that are possible, which is walking in, using the telephone, and this is the really contentious part, which is using the internet. So between 8 and 6:30, you can just send a message to your GP and expect a reply, is what the government is hoping for. Now, in reality, if thousands upon thousands of patients contact their GP in that way, that workload is impossible to deal with, and there is no way really to safely cater for those patients during the day, and that's the problem. I should point out, I don't agree with striking against the government. I don't think that we should work to rule against the government on this one. I think we just need to sit down and negotiate it, because it's not really a safe way of providing care for patients. This isn't the way we should increase access to care for patients.
But I thought that this was all supposed to be being fixed, because, you know, we've had plenty of conversations about how the 8 a.m. scramble is not ideal, and there's many different sort of ways that it could be changed. And I thought that was underway, but I guess it sounds from what you're saying that it's not. I mean, Wes Streeting keeps talking about the app, and people talk about the NHS app being a great thing, but the NHS app doesn't get you an appointment any quicker if there isn't an appointment. So there's still the problem exists that you've got too many patients and not enough doctors, right?
Yeah, it really is as simple as that. If we had more doctors, more nurses, more staff, and more rooms in which to house them, we could see more patients. It's as simple as that. But by saying just contact your GP online or via an app, well, we don't have any more appointments. So what are we supposed to do with those patients that need help? And worryingly, if you are really sick, if you're sick in an emergency style and you think contacting your GP in this way is going to get you seen sooner, you're not. You're going to be bogged down within hundreds or if not thousands of other messages, and you're going to be lost in the system, which actually increases the risk for patients. And that's the key point here. We're worried that this new system is likely to increase the risk for patients rather than actually help access to the system.
Right. So where are all these 5 million appointments going that Keir Starmer keeps telling us about?
That's a really great question. I think there's a little bit of accountancy imagination going on here. Now, well, yeah, let's be honest, there is some accountancy imagination going on. I can think of ways in which general practice has increased appointments superficially, making it look like the appointments has increased because we've been asked to do it in a certain way. And actually capacity hasn't increased. All we're doing is we're showing what we've always done. And an example of that is if, for example, I'm doing a piece of paperwork for a patient now, it might be an insurance report or it might be a reading report from a hospital where it requires me to do something on behalf of the patient. Whereas previously I wouldn't have invited them in or done a phone call, I'd have just done that silently in the background. That might now be added to a computer system to look like an appointment. Well, technically we're doing something for the patient. It is a contact, but it's not an appointment in the classical way that you'd expect.
Right.
So that's a really easy way to show number of contacts with patients going up, whereas in reality, patients won't see the difference.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've seen through this for as long as they've been talking about it, because I know just from the interactions we have here, people tell me, oh yeah, I got an appointment made, you know, last year, and I'm supposed to be having it this week, but they just cancelled it, but they've made me another appointment. So that's already 2 appointments. So and nobody's actually seen anyone, you know, and lots of people have got that happening to them 3 or 4 times over the course of a year. So, I mean, even if they're saying they've created more appointments, it's probably vastly overinflated. If they've created 1 million appointments, they've turned it into 4 million. You know what I mean? That's kind of where we are.
It's exactly right. And of course, yesterday we had announced the concept of the virtual hospital.
Yeah.
And
what do you make of that?
Going to be increased. Well, it's a really interesting concept because, look, people are going to get into arguments about this too, but when COVID came in, general practice moved very much from the old-fashioned face-to-face, walk in, sit down, book an appointment, to telephones or internet or email appointments or webcam appointments. And that has been useful for many patients, not all, I understand. And it has increased our capacity because what would have turned out to be a 10, 15-minute walk-in appointment can be a 5-minute phone call. So that's very useful. And we've been doing that now for at least 5 years, whereas hospitals haven't. So if we think about converting a hospital outpatient appointment from having to travel to the hospital, take your coat off, get stuck in traffic, all that sort of stuff, to you quickly get a phone call from a consultant who says your results are fine, don't worry, we're discharging you. That makes sense, and that will increase capacity. So if the virtual hospital is used in that way, I'm fine, but it really shouldn't be a substitute for those patients who need to be seen face-to-face and examined, or importantly, for those patients who aren't really savvy with the internet. We don't want to create a class of people who get this first-rate care, and then a second class of people who are just left behind by the advancement of the NHS.
No, true. I'm going to ask you a question I haven't asked you for a while. How many days are you doing this week?
I'm seeing patients for 3 days this week and 2 days in planning, organisation. Yes, I'm sorry, Mike, give me the Plank of the Week award if you like.
It's just because I know people will go, why doesn't he do 4?
Well, again, I've answered this question. I'm very happy to, and I'd love to talk about it more. And you know what, Mike? I'm going to give you an open invite. If you want to come and spend time with me to see what I do, you're more than welcome to. I would adore that. But 3 days a week clinically with patients, 2 days a week sorting out the problems of the NHS, talking to people, and trying to make those 3 days a week more effective. So I work 5 days a week, but 3 with patients.
Yep. Dean, thank you very much indeed. As ever, Dr. Dean Eggett there. He's a good egg, is Dean, actually. But there is an issue, isn't there? But if you've got a doctor who wants to be a doctor and he has to spend 2 days a week doing things other than being a doctor, then there's a problem, isn't there? Clearly. It's obvious. If he did 5 days a week, he'd be able to see, 2/5 of the number of people more than he sees currently. It's as simple as that, really, So it would be another, 40% of patients he could see. Makes perfect sense to me. 0344 499 1000. After yesterday's disgraceful slur from David Lammy, says John in Hampshire, I'm assuming the police will be knocking on his door this morning. Surely this is a non-crime hate incident. We all know this won't happen. Two-tier justice. Have a great day. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:45. This from Sandra in Essex. Please don't sell Starmer any swampland in Florida. You put donkeys on it. You probably would, actually. And one from Chris in Chester. This swampland in Florida, Keir wants to know, can you put it in a trust? He's asking for someone else. I love how you guys react to these things all the time. It's so good. Because, yeah, there's more to be said about this trust and the donkeys and the whole, tax avoidance scenario. I'm not going to let him away with it, even though he thinks he can get away with nobody talking about it by calling everyone racist, absolute plank. Elliot Kex here, head of campaigns at Taxpayers Alliance. As if, the gravy train in government wasn't bad enough. We found out yesterday that basically there was a story in which it said that councillors are getting gold-plated pensioners. Not gold-plated pensions, gold-plated pensions, I should say. I don't know what a gold-plated pensioner would look like. You can have one if you want. Gold-plated pensions, right? Which means that, again, most people who don't get the opportunity to get a public sector pension are sort of struggling. They're looking at probably having to pay more tax, thanks to Rachel Reeves. And as they look over there to see the people working in the public sector, they go, blimey, how do they get that pension? Elliot, very good morning to you. Hello, Elliot. How you doing?
Morning, Mike.
Yeah. So once again, I was looking at our good friend Jürgen Meyer up at GB Energy the other day, because there's a job available, which is not massively well paid, but the pension contribution from GB Energy is something like 28.7%, which is massive when it comes to what ordinary private pensions are like.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. So the way the public sector pensions work essentially is, rather than a private sector pension where you put in a little bit of money and then at the end, what money you have, you use, and when it runs out, it runs out. A public sector pension guarantees you to a certain pension every year for the rest of your life when you retire, based on how long you worked in the public sector and how much you earned. And now we're extending these pensions to councillors. They were scrapped in 2014 after they were introduced by Labour for the first time in 2003. And it's just a very useful reminder that this Labour government, they're not on your side, they're on the side of their mates in the unions, their mates in the civil service, and of course their mates in town hall chambers.
Well, that is the problem, isn't it? And is there anything written down that makes it impossible to change this situation? I know, obviously, with reform going into several councils and looking at exactly how they work and exactly how much money is being wasted, surely some of the pension contributions might be somewhere they could look.
Well, that's something that is reassuring, because the way it used to work, and we don't know how it will work in this system, the way it used to work is that councils had to opt in to this pension scheme. So any reformed council, for example, could choose not to opt into this scheme, could choose to take a stand against this Labour government decision to use tens of millions of pounds, not on filling potholes, not on picking up people's garden waste, not on cleaning graffiti, but instead on giving a nest egg to someone that is supposed to be essentially a local volunteer, a councillor. So reform councils, in theory, should have the ability to protest against this decision and not opt into this pension scheme when it's brought in.
OK, so, but it's going to be difficult to take it off people who've already got it, though, presumably.
Well, so councillors don't have access to this pension scheme at the moment. Councillors do, from my understanding, it won't be possible for reform unless they get into national government to end this very generous pension scheme for these sorts of civil servants, the bureaucrats that work in council. But what they will be able to do is stop their local councillors from claiming this pension.
Because I remember many years ago doing stories about where your council tax goes, and something like 75 to 80% of it goes on a combination of salaries and pensions for everybody that works there, and the rest of it, if you're lucky, they might spend it on some services.
Yeah, it's £1 in £4 specifically of council tax money goes just towards pensions. So again, that's not towards the vital services that we all rely on, bins, potholes, etc. That goes just towards paying for the nest eggs of the extraordinarily well-remunerated council officials.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, it's a very interesting report, and one that I recommend people have a look at. Elliot, thanks very much indeed. Elliot Keck, Head of Campaigns at Taxpayers Alliance. Of course, if you work in the public sector, you get a brilliant pension. So much better than anything you could ever get working in the private business of actually trying to raise money. And that's, again, a problem that the Labour Party can't really understand. Nigel from Brighton, who says he's very annoyed, says, strange, it's 12 hours on. I can't find any mention of Nigel Farage's response to Sir Keir's speech anywhere on the BBC News app. Really? I'll check that out. That's incredible, isn't it? But it doesn't surprise me that the BBC think that that's not the story. Here's one from David, who says, the Starmer speech, no mention of the Chagos Islands giveaway, the grooming gangs inquest, illegal migrants and the hotels housing them, digital ID, the threat of Islam, farmers and pensioners thrown under the bus. I could go on. It has to stop, says Dave from Liverpool. Mark in Selby says Keir made that inflammatory speech yesterday to take himself off the front pages for his Donkeygate scandal. How is it working out for you, Keir? No bump in the polls, just another slump. Well, I'll be interested to see the next poll that happens, and no doubt one will be done probably over the course of the weekend by one of the Sunday newspapers. But, you know, there's no respite to the numbers of people coming. I think Nigel Farage said yesterday when he made his speech that some 400 migrants had crossed the Channel just yesterday. Because the boats, of course, are getting bigger. There's a picture in the Mail today of one of those super dinghies, which now carries as many as 125 people. 33,551 migrants arrived in 2025. That's this year alone. That is not going to is not going to go down. 56,793. The migrant tracker now says have come to this country since Starmer has been Prime Minister. And he talks about the rest of the people in this country who don't like that being racist. Well, he's wrong, isn't he? He's plain wrong. In fact, he's never been more wrong in his life, and it's going to backfire horribly. But as Nigel Farage says, the danger of what he says is that he might empower and enrage enough left-wing nutters to do harm to people because they can make the excuse that, oh, well, he's just a racist, so I decided to throw some acid over him. Or he's just a racist, so I decided to beat him up on a train. Oh, he's just a racist, so I decided to drive my car at him. Or I decided to stab him. You know, that is not Britain. And that is not the Britain that Keir Starmer should be encouraging, I'm afraid. This is Talk.
Cabinet table as the care worker who became our country's Deputy Prime Minister. Angela Rayner, this achievement is yours. Thank you. And we want her back as well. We'll definitely make sure she sees that. We need her back.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:55. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. By the way, One thing that's being said in that Keir Starmer speech yesterday, where he makes out, we'll play you the clip in the next hour because I want to have another look at it, but he makes a sort of adjudication. He says, you know, the flag is all very well. It's all very well to paint the flag on walls and, you know, fly the flag, but when it's next to graffiti telling a Chinese restaurant owner to go home, then it's not okay. Well, you know, has anybody ever seen that? Oh, I've never seen any graffiti outside a Chinese restaurant next to a Union Jack telling somebody from the Chinese restaurant to go home. I mean, where's he getting that from? Is he just making that stuff up? We'll find out. Let's talk now to Elon Levy, former Israeli government spokesman and host of Israel's State of a Nation podcast. Elon, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Good to see you. We still await news from Hamas about the peace offer that's come out of the White House some days ago now. Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump having an agreement to end the war, to release the hostages, to get Gaza back on an even proper footing with nothing really connected to Hamas. But strangely, and I know you tweeted about this, a lot of people who wanted a ceasefire some weeks ago have gone all very quiet about it.
Yeah, isn't it funny that all the people who've spent 2 years crying genocide, starvation and war crimes seem in absolutely no rush to end it? And that's how you know that they were making up ridiculous allegations. This is a war that Hamas launched 2 years ago, and it's a war that Hamas is in no rush to end. The whole world is saying Hamas must end the war by freeing the hostages and laying arms. President Trump has put a bold proposal on the table to end this war Hamas started, and it's dragging its feet. It's buying time. That's why it's important. President Trump is saying, you've got 3 or 4 days to respond, because if you don't give us a yes, Israel is going to have to finish the job.
Yeah.
And, you know, Israel is saying Hamas is going to be removed one way or another. Either we're going to do this the easy way, or we'll have to do it the hard way.
I mean, I suppose in the real world, it's unlikely that Hamas are going to agree to sort of defenestrate themselves and become a non-entity organisation that no longer has any power. It's not likely they're going to go along with that, is it?
Well, let's be real. The deal on the table are the terms of Hamas's surrender. I would have preferred that Hamas surrender unconditionally. Instead, we're having a negotiated surrender. But this is about Hamas admitting defeat. This is about Hamas admitting there is nothing left to fight for. And if it continues to wage war, well, more of Gaza is going to be destroyed as Israeli forces try to destroy those tunnels that they've dug under literally in Gaza. That's why we need pressure now on Hamas and its state sponsors, Qatar, Turkey, to tell Hamas it's game over. You have no choice. You have to end this. But you're absolutely right. Hamas has proven that it's not only genocidal, it's also suicidal.
Yeah.
And it's really willing to fight to the last person. It doesn't care how much damage, how much destruction, how much death it brings. That's why we need pressure on it to say, look, it's game over, end the war.
Yeah, because it doesn't suit Hamas's purpose for there to be peace, because with peace comes no need for their existence.
Exactly. Hamas exists for the sake of war. It calls itself an armed resistance movement. And it says it will never give up its weapons, which, by the way, is why it's hard to imagine that it will accept this deal and why it's possible that this will collapse and Israel will end up having to remove Hamas. But this is the really important point, Mike. There is a real chance that Hamas, despite having its back against the wall, will reject this plan to end the war. And then what are we going to hear from world leaders? Well, it can't be pressure on Israel to end the war anyway if that means abandoning the hostages or accepting that Hamas stays in power and its terrorist army is still armed. If Hamas rejects President Trump's plan to end this war, world leaders must say, we back Israel 100% in removing Hamas.
Elon, thank you.
Power.
My message to people smugglers is that
Majesty. Melania and I are deeply grateful to you and Queen Camilla for your extraordinary graciousness. And to William and Kate, thank you so much. It's been so great being with you today. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's a singular privilege to be the first American president welcomed here. The phrase special relationship, seen from American eyes, the word special does not begin to do it justice. We're joined by history and fate, by love and language. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be with you.
Security remains the cornerstone of this special relationship. We have the deepest
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. 3 minutes past 8. It is Wednesday, the 1st of October. We have entered yet another month, but as I've been saying on the show so far this morning, we also seem to have entered a new era of political skullduggery. We've entered the dark side, into the gutter, is what it says on the front page of the Daily Mail. Desperate Starmer accuses Nigel Farage of not liking Britain, one of the more ludicrous things I've heard this Prime Minister say. Then David Lammy, of course, claims Reform's leader flirted with the Hitler Youth before being forced to apologise and retract it. Not really a proper apology, but he went, well, he's denied it now, so I guess I've had to make that clarification. Well, that's not exactly an apology. Just say sorry, matey, because you got it wrong. Just like you got every question on Mastermind wrong. Just like you got everything wrong in your career as the leader of the Foreign Office, the Secretary of State for Foreign and Commonwealth Affairs. Nigel Farage responded yesterday, of course, by accusing the Prime Minister of inciting the radical left and says he's no longer fit to hold office, never mind the great office of state that he does occupy. The Prime Minister's been out and about this morning talking to various media outlets. Of course, he won't be coming here because they don't like talking to us at Labour. I don't know what they're frightened of. They gave us 2 ministers in the last 2 days up at Labour Party conference where they could only do it through an interpreter. Who was Jack Elsom, who did a great job as political editor of The Sun, asking questions. Peter Kyle was here, James Murray as well. Both of them similarly deluded about how the Labour government is actually doing. What we do know, for example, is it is one of the most unpopular governments that has ever existed in the history of politics. Keir Starmer is the most unpopular Prime Minister in the history of time, and literally the economic policy is taking this country down the drain. Front page of the Daily Telegraph today has a piece saying that business confidence has plunged to a record low ahead of the budget as Rachel Reeves prepares a fresh wave of tax rises. Confidence among bosses has fallen below the levels after Liz Truss's mini-budget and the first COVID lockdown. So that's where we are in October of 2025, more than 7 weeks away from Rachel Reeves' budget. They were sitting there in the hall yesterday at Liverpool Party Conference, waving little mini Union Jacks, wearing little buttons on their lapels, waving St George's flags, pretending that they really, really love this country, while at the same time accusing everybody in it who wants to control our borders of being racist. Absolutely extraordinary and unbelievable. Tracy in Chingford says, and I'm going to play it to you later on, I can't believe I've just seen a clip of Diane Abbott saying, I'm all for people giving him a good kicking, referring to Nigel Farage. Absolutely outrageous. Well, can you imagine if a Reform MP said that about Keir Starmer? Lee Anderson, for example. Imagine if he'd come out and said, I'd like to give Keir Starmer a good kicking. I can see why people would want to. Can you imagine the outcry? I'm going to talk to Zia Yusuf coming up, Head of Policy and Doge at Reform UK. This, of course, is Morning Glory. It's the home of common sense. Let's get it on. Welcome to the home of common sense. Welcome to Morning Glory. Zia Yusuf is here. Zia, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good to see you. I was quite gobsmacked, as I think a lot of ordinary British people were yesterday, by the tone of Keir Starmer's speech, by the absolute violent rhetoric that he seemed to be willing to shove out there, and also his complete sort of casual insulting of millions of people in this country.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's not just the Prime Minister. We've seen in the last 48 hours the kind of coordinated, vicious set of demonization and incitement of violence against a single individual in politics, namely our leader, Nigel Farage, that I've seen in my lifetime. I can't remember the last time we've seen that in such a short period of time. Not just the Prime Minister, but a total of 11 cabinet ministers, no less, on pretty much the same day, calling Nigel racist. The Deputy Prime Minister claiming that he flirted with Nazism, namely the Hitler Youth, which, by the way, wasn't even around when Nigel was young. Right. And we've also seen the Prime Minister use language like encouraging his supporters to go into, quote, battle with, quote, the enemy, saying that Nigel represents a threat to our way of life. Again, direct quote. This is language that is clearly designed to incite violence against Nigel. And I also want to share this morning some new information. And I thought long and hard about whether I should share it. I lost some sleep last night thinking about it, but I think it is in the public interest that they know that just about 2 weeks ago, the authorities slashed the size of Nigel's security detail by 75%. The authorities cut Nigel's security detail by 75% 2 weeks ago. That's why so many of us around Nigel are so worried. Now, I want to be clear and reassure people who A, support Nigel, but B, all right-thinking people in this country who believe in sensible democratic politics in this country, that thankfully donors stepped in and have shored up that security, so Nigel is well protected. But the Prime Minister knows exactly what he's doing. This is a Prime Minister who's circling the drain, who, according to a poll this week, is the most unpopular Prime Minister on record. According to a poll this week, the majority of Labour members want to be replaced, and he's lashing out against the man that he knows. Starmer knows he cannot beat Nigel at the ballot box, so he's embarked on the most, I want to say it again, extraordinary, coordinated attacks to incite violence against the man who is the bookmaker's favourite to replace him at number 10 Downing Street. Right. It's disgusting, and he should apologise.
Well, we've played clips this morning, in addition to those that you've mentioned. Shabana Mahmood asked if she thinks that Nigel Farage is a racist. She says she thinks he's worse than that. Don't even know what that means. And also Diane Abbott, who we can forgive because, she comes out with some batty stuff, but she comes out and says, I can see why people want to give him a kicking. This kind of language that if it was, as I said earlier, if it was performed by anybody in reform, there would be calls for people to be kicked out of Parliament, people to be stripped of their jobs. But let me
Mike, the police would be knocking on their door.
Yeah,
the police would be knocking on their door, Mike. And what Diane Abbott said, and I'm unwilling to give her a pass just because she's Diane Abbott, because she went on Newsnight and she said she's, quote, all for giving him a good kicking. And as someone who works with Nigel, has worked with him every single day now for a considerable period of time, seen how much he gives to this country. I have seen psychopaths attempt to attack Nigel, attempt to attack reform supporters, attempt to attack reform activists and volunteers, patriots who love this country. For them to do this, and again, I want to say this isn't just one errant comment. If it was just Diane Abbott or anyone else on Newsnight saying something that then recanted, that's one thing. But a coordinated set of attacks over 48 hours using the biggest megaphone in the country. There's a concept in security circles known as stochastic terrorism. I know that sounds a bit arcane and technical, but I'll try and explain what it is briefly. It's where somebody uses a big megaphone to very publicly demonize and vilify a target, vilify an individual in public in order to whip up and encourage a random act of violence against them. That is a well-known concept in security circles. This comes, by the way, of course, just 2 weeks after the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk, the most high-profile political assassination in recent memory. And I just did an interview a minute ago where they asked, well, this isn't an American phenomenon. Well, no, it isn't. No, it isn't. We know full well that there are members of Parliament who have been brutally murdered in cold blood not too long ago in this country, to our country's shame. And so for the Prime Minister to resort to this, I don't care how desperate he is, to resort to this sort of campaign of vilifying, of rhetoric, there's no excuse for it whatsoever. It is coordinated. They've used the biggest megaphone in the country. There's no excuse for it. He needs to apologize. And frankly, if somebody wants to take us on, look, I'm the head of policy. If you want to take issue with our policies, come and debate our policies. Come and debate the issues. But to embark on this coordinated vilification and demonization campaign against a man who, by the way, has so many threats against him. I see every day tweets and TikToks. Just this morning, I was looking, David Bull has just pushed a screenshot out of somebody where there was a tweet saying nothing can stop Nigel now, and some lunatic replied, well, a sniper rifle could. And this happens almost every single day. So I want to reiterate, donors have stepped in to ensure that Nigel is protected and is safe. But this is a new low in British politics.
It really is. Let me just take you back to that removal of his security from the authorities. So who's responsible for that? Who would have made that decision, and how did they communicate it to him?
Well, who made that decision? It remains to be seen. We don't know yet. It's parliamentary security that make that decision. And a couple of weeks ago, they said, inexplicably, in my humble opinion, that they saw fit to materially downgrade. In fact, downgrade is to the tune of 5%. A year ago, Nigel, Reform was polling at around 15%. Today, we're polling at 32%. He's 3 times more likely to be the next Prime Minister. I see the threats against him very specific. Look, no one has done more to champion free speech in this country than Reform and Nigel. We're the only serious political party saying that we want to stand up for free speech. But even the most ardent free speech activist must accept that there is a limit, and does accept that inciting violence against people is unacceptable. I've seen it time and time again. The threat level against Nigel is real. It's off the charts. And what the Prime Minister has done in coordinating, I want to say this again, it's not one, you will not hear me saying this, if it was one errant comment that then got it recanted at a fringe event at a conference. It is the Prime Minister's office. It is 11 cabinet ministers, the Deputy Prime Minister, the Home Secretary, all 2 weeks after the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk, and 2 weeks after the authorities decimated the size of Nigel's security detail. Yeah,
that is a very, very strange piece of timing, it has to be said. And I mean, as far as the way that, that Nigel Farage can now conduct himself in public, you say luckily there's enough donors to cover the cost of him having his own security to deal with. But basically, we're living in a world now where Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of this country, can stand in front of an audience, a baying kind of crowd of jeering individuals who, for all intents and purposes, to me, look like some kind of mad extremist political rally from the 1970s, right? And he's actually using the words, "We will fight them with everything we have." Now, how is that not some kind of call to arms?
That's exactly. In fact, he actually used the word armed.
Yeah.
He actually used the word armed in his speech. That's another direct quote. And again, anyone who understands security in depth, and we've spoken to security experts about this, there's no doubt he knows exactly what he is doing. Look, I've seen these masked lunatics
Antifa,
at our events. From what we can tell, it looks like it was an Antifa member or sympathizer who was the assassin of Charlie Kirk. And look, we know extremism does exist in this country. And I want to reiterate, this isn't some fringe political party. This is the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, a supposed human rights lawyer, flanked by supposedly great people. And yet they've come out one after the other, 11 no less, to call Nigel racist, to call Reform voters and supporters racist. And as you said, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, said that he's worse than racist. You said, perhaps charitably, you don't know what that means. I know what that means. Well, we know, if somebody is constantly comparing somebody to Nazis, to fascists, again, not debating us on the details of the policy or the merits of the policy, absolutely going after the individual themselves. They know exactly what they are doing. And the fact that this has come, as I said, in the aftermath of the tragic assassination, the most high-profile political assassination in recent memory, in the form of Charlie Kirk, and also, as I said, just a fortnight after the authorities materially downgraded Nigel's security. I'm afraid there's no excuse for it. Keir Starmer needs to apologise.
Yeah. Zia Yusuf, thank you very much indeed for your time. Zia Yusuf, Head of Policy and Doge at Reform UK, issuing that clarion call to Keir Starmer to apologise for what he said, for putting Nigel Farage in the line of fire, literally, putting him in danger, encouraging people to write tweets like the one that he just read out to us. A sniper's bullet would stop him. This is the kind of atmosphere that Keir Starmer has now somehow managed to engender in this country, in what is already a pretty febrile atmosphere. The Prime Minister of this country has been so ridiculously cavalier about people's safety. And then that comes on the top, incredibly, of the Zia Yusuf story that he's just broken right here on Talk. The first time ever, we now learn that his security detail has been reduced by the authorities in Parliament by 75%. What on earth is going on? Let's get a voice note from Em.
Morning, Mike. It's Em in Bath. I think deplorable is one thing. You know, it's not a compliment, but racist, it's just another step, isn't it, in that sort of direction. And I think all Starmer's done is probably just recruit even more voters for reform. I just think the whole thing, you know, him stood behind that red screen, the same old tired sort of sound bites, fixing the foundations, smash the gangs, none of which are doing anything. It's just embarrassing. And it's this attack line, you know, he's the government. Government is supposed to listen to the people. That is exactly what he's not doing. And he's sectioning out a group of people, well, I mean, a lot of people, and calling them racist.
And this is what they do. Thank you for that. Very, very wise words. Yeah, because this is what socialist governments do. They don't think, they call it the government of the people. They say it's a government of service, but it's precisely not that. It's a government of lining their own pockets. He's wearing the same shoes as Lord Ali today, for heaven's sake, in the papers. You know, he's taking free tickets to Taylor Swift. He's getting freebies all over the place. He's got a tax dodge going with a field with some donkeys in it. You know, and these are people who are not used to being interrogated. These are people who think that they can do what they like. They think they can do what the hell they want, and they're not about serving the public. They're about telling the public what to do. Look at him walking down the street there, holding hands with his wife. Just a bizarre character, a weird man, dressed like some kind of North Korean member of, you know, a North Korean version of New Order, just because Lord Ali dresses like that. What is going on? Stephen Wales says, morning, Mike. Regarding Starmer's speech yesterday, Nigel Farage learnt an important lesson yesterday with Starmer. When you get too close to someone like Starmer, who is in a death roll, both politically and personally, a desperate man will do anything. Anything. This government is going to hell in a handcart on steroids. And one here from Barry, who says, morning, Mike. Surely some of the rhetoric from Labour MPs, including the Prime Minister over the past few days, is a borderline breach of the ministerial code. Well, that's a very good question, says Barry in Derbyshire. I wonder what that would be all about. Now, as I said, Keir Starmer's been out and about this morning talking to various different outlets. Of course, he's not coming here, and he's not coming to talk to us. I don't know why he's frightened. But here he is talking about racism on Good Morning Britain.
You've described one of Reform's policies as racist.
The divide at the next election will be between Labour and Reform. And that means it'll be between patriotic national renewal, where we fix our problems and take our country forward, and where I, as Prime Minister, want to serve the whole of our country, our beautiful, tolerant, diverse country, or Reform, which will divide our country, toxic division, and Reform who doesn't want to fix the problems because they are feeding off grievance. It's a fundamental choice about who we are as a country. It's actually bigger than the Labour Party.
Do you accuse people who are considering voting reform of being racist?
No, not in the slightest.
But if they're voting for a party which has racist policies, what does that make them as voters in your view?
Many people are thinking of voting for Reform, want to make sure we've secured our borders, quite right too. That is fundamentally different to Nigel Farage saying he wants to deport migrants who are lawfully here, who've been here for years.
So apparently we've got a beautiful, tolerant country. So if that's the case, then how could it possibly be divided by somebody who happens to have a different view of politics than you do, Sir Keir Starmer? And if in fact you want to be a party that governs the entire nation, everybody in it, then why would you want to single out some people for being racists? Because you don't like what they think. Unbelievable. Let's see what he said about his manifesto. This is his new line, by the way. He said this on Sunday. Our manifesto stands. Have a look.
Now we've got a £30 billion black hole. You promised you would stabilise the economy. The black hole's massive. Who's going to pay this time? Are you going to stick to your manifesto commitment not to increase tax, national insurance and VAT on working people?
The manifesto stands, and since we've been in power...
Up until and including the budget?
Of course, we stand by the manifesto.
So you won't increase national insurance or income tax or VAT on working people?
We stand by the manifesto.
You can't just keep saying the same thing, you complete plonket. Rodney, What's going on? We stand by the manifesto. Yeah, but never mind that. Is there going to be a time when you might put taxes up because, of course, you know, think the economic situation may have changed? We stand by the manifesto. You know, do you fancy going to the Arsenal game on Saturday? We stand by the manifesto. Would you like to go out for dinner? We stand by the manifesto. That's literally what he's doing. He just says, we stand by the manifesto. It's not even English. It doesn't even sound like a sentence. We stand by the manifesto. Well, I stand by a bus stop. And then when the bus comes, I get on the bus. And sometimes I stand by the bus. Maybe sometimes on the bus. I sometimes stand on the tube. I sometimes stand just for no other reason than I don't fancy sitting. It doesn't make any sense. The manifesto stands. Well, does it sit? Does it kneel? Does it take the knee? The manifesto takes the knee. I mean, you might as well just say anything. What a complete and utter idiot. It's 22 minutes past 8.
Cabinet table. As the care worker who became our country's Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, this achievement is yours. Thank you. And we want her back as well. We'll definitely make sure she sees that. We need her back.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:25 I should say. Morning Mike, our own Prime Minister is inciting violence and hatred by calling decent people racist. I am shocked, says Graham in Birmingham. And one from Edward who says, the Labour farce and flags makes me laugh. The only flag their Marxist nation wreckers are interested in is the red flag. That's why they keep singing Keep the Red Flag Flying instead of the national anthem at the end of their conference. Don't be fooled. Do they still do that? I didn't think they still did, but maybe they do. Do you remember when Tony Blair got rid of Clause 4 and got rid of Militant and all the other sort of left-wing nutters out of the party? Well, they're all back, apparently, because if you see the like of the Palestine Action crowd, all the Palestinian flags, all the sort of fringe events at which, you know, they're still having to go at Israel right, left and centre, and just incredible kind of, you know, left-wing madness. It's very much never gone away. Let's talk to Simon, who's in Basingstoke. Simon, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Great show as always.
Thank you.
I find what happened at the Labour Party conference very disturbing.
Yeah.
Not just because of the threats, but if you call someone a Nazi, effectively,
yeah.
Aren't you laying the groundwork for preventing that person from standing for election?
Yeah. Well, you're also kind of dehumanising individual people, aren't you?
You are, but we've seen this happen across other nations. You look at the Marie Le Pen recent example in the recent Moldavan elections where they banned two political parties for so-called Russian interference literally the day before the election took place.
Right.
And I put nothing past this Labour Party because I work in cybersecurity. I could even manage to get contracts during COVID, and I have never seen this market so bad, the employment market so bad.
Right.
And my girlfriend works for a development company in pharmaceuticals. She's been incredibly busy all year. Just in the last few weeks, the sales that her company deals with has crashed through the floor. They're tanking the economy. We're only a few 100,000 people away from having the most people unemployed ever in our country's history.
Yeah.
If you take the people who aren't economically active claiming disability benefits. So I put nothing past this government, and I can see them falsifying evidence against reform, saying they are receiving money from Russia, therefore either reform candidates can't stand or Nigel Farage can't stand.
No, I know. It is absolutely incredible what they're doing, and you can see from what they did yesterday and what that speech was all about yesterday that they will stop at nothing to try and cling on to power. I mean, I said back in the last summer that, you know, these people will self-implode. The government that they will try and run will collapse. It's beginning to happen. It's been happening for a while, and as more and more bad things happen to them, they will get more and more desperate.
They will, and I think it's only a matter of time. I think there's a race on between Britain and France as to who has the first IMF bailout, but that first bailout won't be the last.
No.
And I think we'll see economic collapse. I mean, we're spending so much money just on debt repayment.
Yeah.
And to be frank, what Farage has suggested in terms of indefinite leave to remain, to be frank, is something that some government is likely going to have to do just to be able to keep the government functioning, because the cost of that is enormous. I mean, 30% of the children in UK schools now have at least one migrant parent.
Yeah.
You know, each child costs £7,000 at least a year to educate. You know, this country has been an immensely tolerant country for decades. There's a brilliant Burgess Meredith featuring public information film that the Americans produced during World War II to try and explain to American GIs why British people would treat black soldiers as equals.
Yeah.
And black servicemen as equals. And I think the last 14 years of Tory government and the current previous Labour government and this Labour government have turned the most tolerant country in the world into one that's going to not be very tolerant anymore. And the only people to blame is themselves.
Yeah. They've absolutely created the horror show that we are now living through, and there's no question about that. Simon in Basingstoke makes a very good point, and he points out that Britain has changed. This is why Britain's people have decided to stand up and be counted and to say what they want. And at the moment, the only people articulating what British people want in this country is reform. The Reform Party have understood and listened and seen what it is that immigration has done to this country, and they've understood and listened to what the people have said about what immigration has done to this country, and they've now decided that enough is enough, and they have to tell the politicians who run this country that they're not going to put up with it anymore, and there's something has to be done. Like I say, even yesterday, Nigel Farage, as he was responding to Keir Starmer's ludicrous and hate-filled speech, said that 400 more migrants had crossed the channel only yesterday. Let's have a look at what Starmer said about this Chinese graffiti business.
This great party is proud of our flags, yet if they're painted alongside graffiti telling a Chinese takeaway owner to go home, that's not pride, that's racism. If you say or imply that people cannot be English or British because of the colour of their skin, that mixed heritage families owe you an explanation, that people who've lived here for generations, raised their children here, built their lives here, working in our schools, our hospitals, running businesses, are our neighbours. If you say they should now be deported, then mark my words, we will fight you with everything we have, because you are the enemy of national renewal.
Now, talk about sounding like a Nuremberg rally. Yeah, that's what that sounded like to me. And by the way, I asked the question, where is this graffiti that you speak of? It turns out that somebody did put some graffiti on a Chinese restaurant in York, right? It's in a Labour ward, okay? Many of you have told me and sent me the story. The police are apparently looking for who did it, but they haven't managed to find anybody who did it, and they haven't managed to arrest anybody who did it. So Nicholas says it's in York, it's a Labour ward. As the police haven't identified who did it, then based on the last voting record, it was most likely a Labour supporter who actually did it. Amazing how you can spin a story to politically point score. Even if you want to give Keir Starmer the benefit of the doubt, at the very least, what he's done here, he's taken one isolated incident of something that happened in a very, very tiny part of Britain where it hasn't happened any more than once, and he's used that to somehow catapult himself as the saviour of a racist country. Well, if that's really where he wants to be, then I'm afraid he's going to find himself out on his backside a lot quicker than he thinks. Laura Jane is in Hampshire. Hello, Laura Jane.
Hi there.
How are you doing?
I'm afraid I'm slightly repeating what everyone is saying.
That's okay.
I think that I've been with Reform since it started, and we've got a new branch which has set up near us, and it feels like this is exactly what I knew was going to happen. The more popular the Reform became, the Labour government would start to hit out, and now they realise that Reform is pretty much the opposition to them at the election. They are going to play dirty, and I mean dirty, and I just feel very, very worried for our party, because that's the whole, the raison d'etre is if you like, to save Britain. And what Starmer said yesterday in his speech, and you were right, it sounded just like a Nuremberg rally.
It did.
And then afterwards, I don't know whether you saw, they interviewed some young people who can't have been more than 25, maybe at maximum 30, and they were all saying the sorts of things that we say in Reform, like, Britain is great, we believe in our country, we believe in the people, we believe in patriotism, all those things they were saying. It's just so weird hearing them say those things when, up to now, you would never have used that sort of language if you were in the Labour movement, and it's just it feels like that the young people, are now being sort of whipped up into, and that's the worrying part, is when the.
But there's an awful lot of young people who are very much Reform fans. I mean, I don't know if you were at the Reform conference in Birmingham a couple of weeks ago. I was, and there was an awful lot of young people there who are very, very much on the side of Reform.
Well, I've got 4 dogs, and it was impossible to go up. I would have gone up if I could, but I watched it from start to finish. And by the way, you and Jeremy did a great job. It was really well covered by Talk, and you could see there were a lot of young people.
Yes.
No, I know there are a lot of people young on the side, but it is obvious to me that when you're a young Labour voter, you become sort of I forget the word, but messianic about your. It's just the way that young people are. If they're Labour voters, they become quite. It's a whole different movement out there that they're whipping up now, and that's the danger.
Yes, it is. Listen, you're right to raise it, Laura Jane. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you so much for calling. Absolutely brilliant point. Shane in Bedford says, great show as always, Mike. Did you see Starmer talk about a digital NHS service? He said no 3-hour bus trips to doctor's appointments. Why can't we have a Mercedes taxi taking us from door to door like the illegal immigrants? This man is so ignorant, it is beyond belief. And Steve says, isn't it about time that Lindsay Hoyle does his job properly and tells all MPs their behaviour and comments are endangering their own and their colleagues' safety? Well, he did it last time, didn't he? When he he said he needed to tell people to somehow be kinder to one another. Well, why isn't he doing that now? Let's see if he does it when Parliament reforms itself. Let's get a voice note from Pete.
GPs might as well go on strike, Mike, because tell you what, you wouldn't know they're there. You can't get in to see one. You wouldn't even know if they're in the surgery or not, would you?
Pete makes a good point. Apparently, according to Dr. Dean Eggett, he won't go on strike, and GPs sort of don't go on strike. Well, they're threatening to go on strike if the government make it any easier for people to get appointments with them. I mean, what sort of people are they? You know, that's like somebody running a shop and going, listen, if any more of you people come in here and buy stuff, we're going to have to shut the place down. We're not having it. We are not having it. We're going to be too busy to deal with you all, so we're going to have to shut the shop. That's insane. It's 8:36.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 8:39. Goodness me, the time is flying. Mike from Bryn Mawr says this. Morning, Mike. Hasn't Rodney the toolmaker's son learned anything from Trump's second election win? Every time they slagged him off, he got more popular, just like Nigel Farage's. Vote reform, make Britain great again. Great show, Mike. Thank you very much indeed. Well, that is the effect it's going to have. You know, because Keir Starmer just doesn't have it. Whatever he hasn't got, he's never going to have it, is he? Let's face it. And we haven't even mentioned really this morning migrant hotels. We're going to do that right now because Orla Minahan is here, Reform candidate for Epping. She's taking part today in a massive protest, a pink protest outside Parliament in Westminster Square because it's about time, quite frankly. And this has been an extension really of the protest that started outside the Bell Hotel in Epping where still migrants are being held and where still migrants are being put in from time to time. Let's find out what's going on. Orla, very good morning to you.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, very well indeed. Are you on your way, or are you there yet?
I'm in the car in Whitehall, and we are waiting for the sound system to arrive. And we've had a bit of a disaster this morning. A scaffolding company that were supposed to put our stage up pulled out at 6:30.
No.
And they said that it would be bad PR.
Oh, you're joking?
No.
That's unbelievable.
So we explained that. I explained to them and said, look, this is, you know, we're expecting 800, 1,000 women.
Yeah.
And why is it bad PR? It's good PR, if anything. And he said, no, we can't be associated with the right, quote unquote.
That's extraordinary, isn't it? That is ridiculous.
Yes.
Do you need some help? Have you got anybody to replace them?
So lovely Rupert Lowe is on the case. He has called this morning and he's trying to get us a stage. We've done some SOSs out on social media. If push comes to shove, I think we're just going to have to get a couple of boxes or a barrel from a local pub, and Susan Hall will have to stand on a barrel at 11 o'clock as she does her speech to everybody.
Right.
So it's
scaffolding. You can do without people who decide to work for you based on what your political views are, even if that was a reason for that, which there isn't.
Yep.
Absolute nonsense. I mean, you're all about safeguarding children,
Correct.
safeguarding people, safeguarding women. Isn't that what the Labour government's supposed to be all about?
Well, exactly. And I mean, look, the pink protest today, this is our first one, and we're overwhelmed by the amount of support we're getting. I've got about 50 ladies who've just called me from Epping Station who are all meeting to come together. There's women coming from everywhere. I've had people contact us from Brighton, from Newcastle. So we're hoping it's going to be an amazing event. And the thing is, a lot of these women, Mike, have never protested before.
No.
They've never felt the need to protest. They've always accepted the status quo, even if they didn't feel that it was, going the way that they believed. But now we've got to a stage where women and, grandmothers, mothers, we've got a lady who's 90 today coming on a mobility scooter, and they're saying, we can't tolerate this anymore.
No.
And the pink protest is giving them the opportunity and the platform to come and protest in safety, and they feel that they're standing side by side with people of the same mindset. So, yeah, we're there to say to the government, stop bringing in thousands and thousands of illegal migrant men into this country day after day. Our borders are open, and therefore, we are literally giving license to anybody to come in and abuse our women and children. It's just not okay. So that's what the protest is today. We've got some amazing speakers. We've got Maria Botel from Restore Britain. We've got Susan Hall. We've got loads and loads of different ladies from pink protests around the country. So it's going to be an amazing day if we get something to stand on.
How about just driving
So if
a
there's
truck?
anyone out
Can
there
you not
that can
just
give us
can
a
you not
stage?
just stand on like a flatbed truck or something like that? Can you get one of those?
Well, we've got a truck, but the Metropolitan Police said that we can't use it because it's on grass opposite Downing Street.
Right.
So I'm going to go and sweet chat to them now and see if I can make some arrangements.
Yeah,
but it will be fine. We'll pull it together.
I'm sure there'll be people listening to this and watching this show right now who will do their absolute utmost. And if anybody can help, by the way, because Rupert Lowe's probably going to do a great job, but if he can't, anybody who has anything they can do to help Orla and the pink protest, you get in touch with us, please.
Amazing.
And we'll pass it on and get something down there for you, because it's a fantastic event. And what a great day to be doing it as well, the day after Keir Starmer's called everybody a racist.
I know. So what we want to say I've got some ladies are turning up now. They're all waving flags at me. So, but we want to say to Pink, is he going to turn around today and look at, Sarah, who is a 38-year-old single mum? Is he going to turn around to a lady called Shirley who turned 82 last week, and Mavis who's 91, and say you're racist? Is that what he's going to say to us today when we're all protesting about protecting our children and grandchildren?
I know.
It's absolute nonsense.
It
nonsense.
is absolutely ridiculous. And let's hope the police behave themselves as well and
Yes,
make sure they
I'm sure
look
they
after
will.
you and just make sure that everybody has a great day out. It's fantastic. If anybody wants to come down and join you, Orla, when does it all kind of get underway?
So it starts from 10 o'clock. So there will be stewards outside Westminster Station to escort people down Whitehall to Richmond Terrace opposite Downing Street.
Yeah.
Hopefully by then our sound system will be set up. But if not, there will be hundreds of women wearing pink. You won't be able to miss us. It will look like a sea of Pepto-Bismol across Whitehall, and it will be a great day. And you know what? At the end of the day, we stand outside the hotels in Epping and Canary Wharf, and we sing and we, stand there together in solidarity, and we make it work. And if that's what we've got to do today, we'll do that today.
Brilliant. Well, listen, have a great day and really enjoy yourself, and I'm sure that everything will work out in the end. Orla, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Orla Minahan there, great woman, Reform candidate for Epping, has single-handedly, with some other help, I mean, she'll be the first to admit that, has been leading the charge over in Epping outside the Bell Hotel. And by the way, there's another guy in the Bell Hotel who's in court at the moment. Apparently, he wants to return to Syria. We won't mention all the details because obviously it's a case that's ongoing. But rest assured, what you know is that if anybody's inside the Bell Hotel, there's a pretty good chance that they're going to end up in some way, shape or form breaking the law, because that's what seems to be going on. Absolutely incredible stuff. Mike says, Susan, the idiot Lammy has got to go now following his outrageous lie, closely followed by this horrible excuse for a government. Looking forward to another great show. Keep up the good work. Morning, Mike. Have you noticed that Reform's membership has gained 3,600 since Friday? Well done, Rodney. That's from Carol in East Yorkshire. Let's get a voice note from Chiro.
Good morning, Mike. My name is Chiro from Bedford. I am the son of illegal immigrant Italians that made their way to the UK in the 1950s. I am wholly against illegal immigrants and everything that's happening at the moment. But I'm surprised you haven't brought up the hypocrisy of yesterday's conference. There's been videos shared showing British and St. George's flags spread out amongst the audience and everybody waving their flags when we're in a time that we can't proudly display our flags without them being prized from a 16-year-old hand or taken down from flagpoles.
And then they're all sitting there clasping their little flags, all having been brought in, I believe, from Yvette Cooper's personal collection, because as you know, what she does at home is when she's doing nothing at all, she just puts more flags up. A lot of bunting, apparently, in her house. She and Ed Ball share. I see him coming down for breakfast in the morning, which is obviously very early, because he has to do that early breakfast show on ITV, in his Union Jack onesie. He likes to wear that. Union Jack socks, of course, pyjamas as well. St George flags, pyjamas. They love all that down at Yvette Cooper's place. And so she brought all the flags in for them. Nice of her. So they could all wave them like little patriots that they are, even though, of course, they're not really, are they? It's 8:48. This is Morning Glory.
suppose the danger maybe is I have built up a community over the last year or two who I think feel that I am genuine and that I speak my true thoughts. I am not giving lines. You ask me a question, I will answer it as fairly and as truthfully as I can. And maybe that is a threat to, I don't know, a lack of authenticity. I don't know is the truth. I've just found it. I'm not angry. It's upset me. It's hurtful. And I think, I've slugged my guts out for this party and continue to try and do so in many ways. And this is the thanks you get.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:51. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Right now, let's do something we do at this time every day, and it is 90 minutes in 90 seconds with The Sun.
90 minutes in 90 seconds from The Sun.
And it's time to say a very good morning to Charlie White, football editor at The Sun. Charlie, very good morning to you.
How you doing?
I love the back page headline today, special 1-0. I mean, you've got to laugh, haven't you?
Absolutely, yeah. You can normally bet that there'll be... with Mourinho in town, there'll be either a special headline or a MOUR headline or something like that. So yes, all good. Chelsea straight past Mourinho on his return to Stamford Bridge with his latest team, Benfica. So yeah, a good win for Chelsea because they're having a bit of a ropey spell at the moment.
That's right, because I mean, I was listening yesterday to one of your colleagues talking to Jeremy Kyle, I think, about how basically, they might welcome Jose with a bigger cheer than the current manager will get. But I don't know if that happened.
I think he had a warm return in the past, because you've got to remember he's gone back to Tottenham and he's been with Inter Milan and he's been with Man United, and it's not always been that warm with Chelsea because of what's happened over the years. But look, the times are healer, and I'm sure I reckon Jose. I don't think he'll manage Chelsea again, but I'm sure he'll manage in the Premier League, and he'll probably be in London. He's still got a house in London, Mike. He loves London, and we love Jose, certainly in the media as well. He's a lot more interesting than some of the managers, I have to say.
Yeah, absolutely right. And a bad result for Liverpool. I mean, people are starting to say that. I see Jamie Carragher was having a bit of a go at them, saying they don't look like a top team at the moment.
Yeah, they're struggling a bit. Obviously, they set the standards quite high. I think worse for Liverpool last night was injury to their goalkeeper Alisson, who's best keeper in the Premier League, probably best in the world, to be honest. So they've got a tough game at Chelsea, funnily enough. So I think, look, in this Champions League, this new format that drives some people mad, I think you can lose a game. It's not a disaster. But if Liverpool keep playing like this and they lose to Chelsea on Saturday, then they might have a bit of a problem.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, they lost to Crystal Palace at the weekend, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. So, look, you can have the odd blip, but if they suddenly lose 3 in a row, which looks to be entirely possible, suddenly that will give big hope to Arsenal, who really should be looking at winning the title now.
Yeah, absolutely right. Charlie, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. Charlie White, football editor at The Sun there, with good news for Chelsea, bad news for Liverpool. That was 90 minutes in 90 seconds.
90 minutes in 90 seconds from The Sun.
Now, we love to talk about Ed Miliband on this show. He's been out and about up at the Labour Party conference, of course, in Liverpool, doing a lot of very weird things, talking about energy again. But he took a bit of a blow this week, because Rachel Reeves has apparently said that she's going to soften their crackdown on North Sea oil, and she's going to start, not exactly baby drilling, but certainly going against what he wants them to do. But let's have a look, just before we talk to our next guest, who is, of course, Rupert Darwell, author of Green Tyranny. Have a look at what Keir Starmer had to say today about the energy bill savings of 300 quid.
Just to be absolutely clear, you are still sticking to that £300 promise.
I want to bring energy bills down significantly for families by the next election, and that's
by
what we will do.
£300?
Well, yes, £300 is the amount we put out there, but I know the commitment I made, and I'm determined we're going to bring those bills down, because I know what an impact they've had on people struggling to make ends meet and living through what must seem like a continuous and continuing cost of living crisis.
Yeah. OK, then. So he's determined to bring the bills down, but he can't say by how much. Of course, I'm hoping they bring the bills down, because apart from anything else, I'm paying Ed Miliband's bill at the moment in his house, his second house in Doncaster. Rupert, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
I mean, we should all hope that that the bills come down so that we don't have to pay the second house bills of all these MPs who keep wanting to tell us that they're bringing our bills down.
They're not going to come down, Mike. That's the truth. And Ed Miliband launched a new round of allocating enormous subsidies, especially to offshore wind, and that is a guarantee that bills will continue to go up. The more offshore wind, the more renewables there is on the grid, the higher bills will go. That's just the way it is.
Yeah. Well, they can't do anything to reduce the price unless and until they dump net zero, right?
Yeah, they need, absolutely, the first thing is it's Section 2 of the Climate Change Act 2008, that needs to be repealed, which puts a duty on the government to pursue net zero. And if it doesn't, it means every green pressure group, every green rent seeker, wind investor can take the government to court, and the judges can force the government to turn the thumb screws even harder.
It is extraordinary, isn't it? And meanwhile, Ed Miliband is still buying up solar panels from China. He's still professing to build more windmills up and down the country. And there doesn't seem anybody in the Labour government, despite the fact they haven't got the money to do it, willing to stop him.
Yeah, fundamentally, Mike, they're trapped by green ideology.
Yeah.
Green ideology has taken over the Labour Party. It's the strongest bit, other than Gaza. Actually, we see that with Greta Thunberg. It's the green stuff and the Gaza stuff. They're the strongest parts of the ideology of Labour. And so it's really, really difficult for Labour to back off from where they are. Essentially, Keir Starmer's trapped by this ideology.
Yeah, and he can't find a way out. So where does it all end? Because when we inevitably have an economic collapse, which I think will happen sooner rather than later, at what point will somebody say, you know, we've got to just cut the cord here?
Yeah, you've seen Reform UK, Nigel Farage, Richard Tice talking about dumping net zero. The Conservatives are moving a bit. Kemi Badenoch put a question mark over net zero, but she's very much sitting on the fence. She's got Mel Stride, who is a fervent believer in net zero. She put James Cleverly back in her shadow cabinet, effectively made him her deputy. He is fervent for net zero. So the Conservatives have got a lot of problems, a lot of obstacles to overcome before they have a clear policy on net zero.
Yeah, and that seems to be the problem. Meanwhile, we'll just have to keep paying through the nose, I suppose, because another big winter coming up. It's probably going to be cold. We're probably going to be spending an awful lot more money. There's not much rest for the wicked, I'm afraid.
Yeah, Ed Miliband's message to us is just suck it up, folks.
Yeah, I know. Shocking, isn't it? Good to talk to you, though. Rupert Darwell, thank you very much indeed, author of Green Tyranny. I've got this rather long message for you. I'm going to read it, though, from Mark in Surrey. The trouble is, Mike, so many young people are indoctrinated at school and university, it's hard for the young to see sense. I'm a builder. My wife is a secretary. We live in Surrey, and both from council estates where my mum still lives. Both my daughters, however, were tarred as posh girls at university by other pupils because they came from Surrey, by kids from homes with garages bigger than our little two-bedroom terrace. They both knew never to get involved in political talk with the multicoloured haired ring through their nose kids, daddy most likely a barrister, as it's a row you just cannot win. On graduating, my eldest said to me the best thing about finishing uni was getting away from all the lefties. Luckily, my two were clued up enough to see through all the nonsense coming from lefty teachers, but kids at school have to be protected from all this, just like religion is banned in public schools in the US, political opinion should be in this country. And Mark says he's not from the posh part of Surrey. Listen, I take your point, but, you know, more and more kids, and I know particularly just from this experience of my own, the ones who are coming out of school now at 18 are much more right-wing than seemingly even their elder brothers and sisters. So we'll talk some more about that. We've got Baroness Kate Hoey coming up in the next hour. We'll take more of your views as well. This, of course, is the home of common sense. We'll see you after the news.
Do you think it's a racist policy?
Well, I do think that it's a racist policy. I do think it's immoral. It needs to be called out for what it is.
According to Keir Starmer, if you think young men that illegally cross the English Channel should be detained and deported, you're racist. In fact, if you even criticise any element of the immigration policies of the last two governments, you're racist. And yet the Home Secretary, Shubham Mahmood, tries to copy our policies.
Patriotism, a force for good, is turning into something smaller, something more like ethno-nationalism, which struggles to accept that someone who looks like me and has a faith like mine can truly be English or British.
Britain is being invaded. Thousands of fighting-age men from countries that despise Britain continue to arrive on our beaches. Our plan is the only appropriate response to a national security emergency. Immediate removal. Deportation is the ultimate deterrent.
Our flags flying proudly as we celebrate difference and oppose racism.
Labour says these policies
are racist and immoral. And by implication, reform supporters, reform voters, reform sympathisers are racist too. Yes, if you think we should control our borders, you are, by the definition of the Prime Minister and his cabinet, all racists.
We can all see that the country faces a choice, a defining choice. Britain stands at a fork in the road. We can choose decency, or we can choose division, renewal or decline.
To accuse countless millions of being racist is a very, very low blow. Why? Well, this language will incite and encourage the radical left. I'm thinking of Antifa and other organisations like that. It directly threatens the safety of our elected officials and our campaigners. And frankly, in the wake of the Charlie Kirk murder, I think this is an absolute disgrace.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 9. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10. Of course, Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here. It is Wednesday, the 1st of October. We've crossed into another month, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen. Very firmly into the autumn season and also very firmly into some dangerous new territory politically because, as I've been saying on the show this morning, and you've very much been agreeing, Keir Starmer has taken politics into the gutter. It says that on the front page of the Daily Mail, and I think they're absolutely right. A huge row has erupted in the political sphere because Keir Starmer basically accused Nigel Farage of not liking Britain yesterday in his speech at Labour Party conference. Then, of course, the former Foreign Secretary, now Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy, claimed that the Reform leader flirted with the Hitler Youth when he was younger before being forced to apologise just about 20 minutes later when he said, oh yeah, well, Nigel Farage has denied it now, so I just want to make a clarification. Well, sorry, mate, you shouldn't have said it in the first place. Nigel Farage, meanwhile, responded yesterday by accusing the Prime Minister of inciting the radical left into committing acts of violence and says that Starmer, quite frankly, is no longer fit to hold office. I can't disagree with him. The hits just keep on coming, though, because as we saw just before the news there, Keir Starmer is doing the rounds this morning, not talking to us, of course, doesn't like us, but is talking to ITV, is talking to the BBC, and he said to them that he's very, very firm on saving us all money in our electricity bills. He can't tell us exactly what the amount will be, but he's determined to make sure that his manifesto commitment stands, which is what his favourite mantra is at the moment. But his first lie of the day has gone out, and here it is on Twitter. Great British Energy will cut bills for schools and hospitals and deliver new jobs in a thriving clean energy sector. This is patriotic national renewal. No, it isn't. Where are you getting the Chinese solar panels from? They're put on the roof of a school. Oh yeah, China. Is Ed Miliband making sure that they're not coming from places where there are slave labour camps being used to promote them? And where are you getting all the windmills from to put on the top of school buildings and hospitals? Oh, yeah, China. OK. And so it's not really patriotic national renewal, is it? Patriotic Chinese national renewal. Giving a lot of money to China so they can continue to enslave people. Very good idea. Meanwhile, Great British Energy is still run by Jürgen. The man who doesn't really have anybody else working with him, who doesn't really have a proper job, who doesn't really know what bills cost, because when last time he was asked about it, he said it's nothing to do with us what it costs. Nothing to do with us at all. Let's get a voice note from George.
This whole the manifesto stands thing, I mean, they're such weasel words, aren't they? It's nonsense, really. If he had an answer, he would just say, yes, income tax is going to go up, national insurance is going to go up. The manifesto stands isn't an answer. I guess it's like if you ask your missus, are you cheating on me? And she just said, the wedding vows stand. Then you ask her again, are you cheating on me? The wedding vows stand. Oh, so you are cheating on me then? The bloke is just useless.
It's infuriating. It's a very good analogy, that, by the way, George. Very, very true. It's exactly right. Ask him any question, he says the same thing. Our manifesto stands. So, I can stand, you can stand. We can sit, or we can, you know, run, or walk, or maybe even jump on one leg, hop. I don't know. It's a new political language. I'm not sure I understand it. But what I do say, and what I can say, is I've never seen anything like the dreadful speech that was made yesterday by the Prime Minister of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, which can only do one thing, and that is to drive more voters into the arms of Reform and Nigel Farage. Let's talk to Baroness Kate Hoey, independent peer and former Labour MP. Kate, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Michael.
Listen, I've been around a fair few years watching politics. I've never seen anything like that yesterday. That speech that Keir Starmer made, clearly deliberately made to ramp up the pressure, to sort of to get an angry mob, in effect, who were watching it, all worked up, and to, as Nigel Farage says, and to encourage some people to really hate an English politician.
Well, of course, conferences, and I went to many of them. Fortunately, I haven't had to go to them these days. The leader and the Prime Minister, as he is, has to, you know, make his supporters, his members who are there, feel cheerful. And of course, going into that conference, they weren't very cheerful. Clearly, he wanted to evoke all the kind of anger and frustration, probably, that he has about reform. But I think, you know, he clearly wasn't advised that this could really go back to him and haunt him, because I think what we're seeing now is that the messages he was trying to get across, if you could find any of them, have been completely overshadowed. And I found it quite, well, apart from anything else, I thought it was quite boring just listening to him always going on about Farage. I mean, he mentioned it so many times that you thought, you know, whose conference is this? Right. But I think he went too far, ridiculous points that anyone who's had any involvement with Nigel Farage over years, and I had during the Brexit campaign, knows he's not a racist, and most importantly, knows that he cares about our country. Of course. That was just what was so ridiculous about it. And then, I mean, I was very, very surprised, well, not surprised, but, you know, disappointed in David Lammy's remarks. Because apart from anything else, he didn't seem to know his history about the you know, when the Hitler Youth were there, and the idea that Nigel Farage was sort of involved with. He was trying to imply that he'd been involved with the Hitler Youth. Right. Just nonsense.
But it tells you something, doesn't it, Kate? It tells you something about the mindset of some of these members of the government, because what they want to do is to throw some mud, which then sticks. You know, you can call it many things, but it's basically just peddling lies and hoping that people will remember what you said, even though you know when you're saying it that it's not true.
Yes, and I mean, David Lammy has a bit of a history of saying things and then going back on them, but he did have to go back on that very quickly. And I mean, I imagine that there could be, only that I think Nigel would be, you know, probably not want to waste his time taking some kind of legal action against them. But I mean, you could actually, what he said was really, really defamatory.
Oh, for sure. No question at all. Well, let me just play a couple of clips. This is, first of all, Nigel Farage's response to Keir Starmer's speech.
Labour says these policies are racist and immoral, and by implication, Reform supporters, Reform voters, Reform sympathisers are racist too. Yes, if you think we should control our borders, you are, by the definition of the Prime Minister and his cabinet, all racists. Now, I don't normally worry about abuse being thrown at me. I've got kind of used to it over the course of the last few years. But to accuse countless millions of being racist is a very, very low blow. Why? Well, this language will incite and encourage the radical left. I'm thinking of Antifa and other organisations like that. It directly threatens the safety of our elected officials and our campaigners. And frankly, in the wake of the Charlie Kirk murder, I think this is an absolute disgrace.
And a lot of people absolutely sympathising with what Nigel had to say there, Kate, because he's right, isn't he?
Well, he is right in that, you know, I mean, I saw during the Brexit campaign when Nigel Farage was going to rallies and so on, the people who would turn up to heckle, and he had to have protection then. So things are a lot, you know, he's a lot more, even more high profile these days. I think that again is something that you know, if I was just sitting at home watching that yesterday as an active Reform member, it wasn't going to change me in the slightest. You know, to be accused by Keir Starmer of being kind of neo-racist, I would have been more and more angry about what he was saying. And as I think Nigel said at some other point, that, you know, he was determined. This made him even more determined to show the government at the polls next year just what people thought. And, you know, that is why he's obviously desperate. But what genuinely surprises me is that the Labour Party is, you know, so desperate sort of so early, in a sense, because there is such a long time, sadly, to a general election. But he's clearly worried about his own position, his own leadership. And I mean, I'm not at the conference, but I gather from what some of my friends who have been saying is that there are people still, despite his speech, talking about when and how they might.
Oh, I don't think it's changed any of that, because what people can see is that he's lost the confidence of the nation, certainly, if he ever had it. He's certainly lost the confidence of most of his parliamentary party. It's not clear exactly who supports him still in cabinet. Dan Hodges has written a piece in the Mail today basically saying that the timetable kind of continues to run down to the point where he's out. And he says it will start with probably Lucy Powell becoming Labour's new deputy leader. That would be the first kind of blow. And then Rachel Reeves will deliver her budget, which will be the second blow, because that will be in a really, really bad place. And then Morgan McSweeney probably will have to step down sometime before the end of the year. And then that only leaves him with the next May elections to look forward to, where he's going to get slaughtered.
Yes, I mean, there is a very clear path to those who want to get rid of him, and next May is obviously crucial. But, you know, the irony also is that he goes on and attacks Reform and attacks Farage, and yet all the policies that he's beginning to try and pretend that he wants to change have all come from Reform arguments about migration, which, you know, Nigel Farage was talking about years ago. And then things like, you know, many of us have been calling for years to get this idea about everybody should have to go to university, or 50%, the kind of Tony Blair idea of everyone. He's changing that. Now, that is something, I think, for me, that was one of the most, the only really, really positive thing that came out of his speech yesterday, if he means it, and if we can deliver that good, high-quality apprentice.
Yes. But that is the problem with this government, is that an awful lot of what they say isn't deliverable, and it hasn't been delivered. I mean, last Friday, you would have thought the most important policy document in his entire portfolio was digital ID. Didn't even get a mention, really, in the speech. You know, they launched it early because we think they wanted to try and get Morgan McSweeney off the front page, and they didn't really want to keep talking about, you know, Donkeygate and all the rest of it. But, you know, most of the things that he says he wants to do won't ever happen. You know, the other announcement yesterday about sort of virtual GP appointments and virtual hospitals. He's going to be making 8.5 million more appointments. I spoke to a doctor today. He said it's already untrue that they're putting on 5 million more appointments, because it's all a kind of it's an accounting exercise. They're not. People are still waiting just as long as they were. People still can't get a doctor's appointment. You know, the people aren't stupid.
Yes, and there are an awful lot of people who still are not online or not on regular good quality online, and, you know, that idea of being able to make your appointment. We need to get back to the situation where you could actually literally turn up to see your doctor, and even if you had to wait for a while, you saw a doctor. But you know, the irony is that most of the things they've actually done were not in the manifesto. You know, going back on the winter fuel, the farm tax on small farms, those things weren't in the manifesto. So he seems to be going on about sticking to his manifesto when actually he's delivered the really horrible things were not in his manifesto.
Right. So it does seem extraordinary, doesn't it? And meanwhile, let's have a look at this. I wanted to ask you about this wrapping themselves in the flag, which doesn't look right. It looks as if there's something slightly wrong with it. Here's Starmer telling conference to fly the flag.
So let's fly all our flags, conference, because they're our flags. They belong to all of us, and we will never surrender them.
I mean, I haven't seen that many people flying flags because they were told to since the Lib Dem conference, where they all did the same thing. You know, meanwhile, in various Labour councils up and down the land, people are being sent out by the council to tear down flags that have been put up by the people.
Yes, he's certainly been spooked by this kind of what you would call genuine flag flying, or people going out and deciding that they wanted to do that as a form of almost protest. And I thought it did look ridiculous, them going around handing out the flags, and then everyone, even some of them looking quite slightly embarrassed by doing it as well. I don't think it was something that comes naturally.
This is what I mean. And you know, I was laughingly saying today, because remember that Yvette Cooper gave that ludicrous interview a few weeks back where she said that, you know, her house is full of Union Jack bunting, you know, and they've got flags everywhere, and you just have this vision of her and Ed Balls having dinner together, you know, surrounded by Union flags and, you know, patriotic cushions and, you know, a British bulldog on the mantelpiece. It's all nonsense, you know. They don't understand. I mean, you know this better than anyone, coming from where you come from. It's not about flying a flag, patriotism, is it?
Yeah, no, it's about your emotional feeling towards the country you live in.
Right.
And it isn't something that you can just suddenly kind of decide, oh yeah, I'm going to fly the flag to show I'm, you know, patriotic.
Yeah.
The Prime Minister is clearly, you know, out of his depths in terms of dealing with the real feeling out there in terms of how people feel about what has happened to their country.
I know, and people's real concerns are not going to get assuaged by his continual naming them racist. You know, that's not what's going to be the way for him to succeed in his job, and it's not going to be the way for him to get back any kind of popularity. I think he's finished. I think he's not going to get it back. I think he's out of a job. I mean, I think he'll be surprised if he lasts until Christmas. So let me finish up with just one picture. I don't know if you've seen the Mail today. I'm going to hold it up. It's a picture of Lord Ali, who apparently is back at conference this week. But Lord Ali's wearing exactly the same shoes as Keir Starmer. They're both wearing blue Adidas trainers, and their outfits are almost identical. I just find all that very strange, don't you?
Well, perhaps, you know, they obviously share the same the shop that they buy things, whether they share the same amount of money or whoever pays for them. And I also wanted to, perhaps Ali paid for all the flags yesterday too.
Well, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, that's.
I wouldn't be surprised. It's just a very odd look. I just don't really get it. But there we are. It's just me.
Well, I hadn't noticed that, so that's very, very observant.
Thank you very much. Yeah, well, listen, I thank the Daily Mail for that. Baroness Kate Hoey, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. Independent peer, former Labour MP, of course. Morning, Mike says, Kish, I'm a 53-year-old mixed heritage Briton, born and bred. I've also just joined Reform UK and have therefore also signed up to extensive rehabilitation for my entrenched racism. Go figure. Absolutely right. And this one from Lorraine, who says, Diane Abbott stating that she is all for people for giving him a good kicking regarding Nigel Farage is clear incitement of violence. There is no excuse. This woman must be arrested, immediately charged and imprisoned for at least 31 months. Abbott is unfit for office. She must be sacked. We cannot have such gutter politics. Well, this is the problem, isn't it? And Chris says this from Lancashire. Just imagine the reaction if Nigel said that Diane Abbott deserved a good kicking. Immediately, he would be accused of misogyny, racism and of inciting violence. There's no reaction from the authorities if anyone says similar things about Nigel. Even a suggestion that milkshake should have been acid is literally laughed off because it was comedy. It's disgusting. I know. Should we play the Diane Abbott clip? Let's have a look. This was on Newsnight last night.
He's only got 5 MPs, and the danger is, I'm all for people giving him a good kicking. Wes Streeting did that this morning.
We know she doesn't mean an actual physical kicking, but some people might think that's what she means. How did she get away with it? Why is she not getting her collar felt, as we used to say? 9:20.
suppose the danger maybe is I have built up a community over the last year or two who I think feel that I am genuine and that I speak my true thoughts. I am not giving lines. You ask me a question, I will answer it as fairly and as truthfully as I can. And maybe that is a threat to, I don't know, a lack of authenticity. I don't know is the truth. I've just found it. I'm not angry. It's upset me. It's hurtful. And I think, I've slugged my guts out for this party and continue to try and do so in many ways. And this is the thanks you get.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. 9:23 says Paul this. I think the Labour Party have just conceded the biggest own goal of the lot, with Starmer branding Farage racist and Lammy linking Farage with the Hitler Youth. It just shows how out of touch the Labour Party are with normal people, the ones they have always said were their supporters. The lies from this party know no boundaries. They are utterly useless and well out of their depth. Let's get a voice note from James.
Morning, Mike. James from Blackburn. I noticed when he's talking to Susanna Reid, our old mate here, got his thumbs crossed over. No, they're not racists, but with his fingers crossed. Didn't mean it. That's how pathetic he is. And I know he will be doing it. His little tiny weasel brain will be going, I best cross my fingers. I didn't mean it. Look, I didn't mean it. He's a nasty piece of work, this man. I watched him yesterday. I sat through the whole lot. He's disgusting. Ugh.
I tell you, James, I mean, a lot of people feel exactly how you just said that. I mean, I think people are genuinely disgusted. Here's what he actually said on GMB this morning, talking to Susanna Reid.
You've described one of Reform's policies as racist.
The divide at the next election will be between Labour and Reform. And that means it'll be between patriotic national renewal, where we fix our problems and take our country forward, and where I, as Prime Minister, want to serve the whole of our country, our beautiful, tolerant, diverse country, or Reform, which will divide our country, toxic division, and Reform who doesn't want to fix the problems because they are feeding off grievance. It's a fundamental choice about who we are as a country. It's actually bigger than the Labour Party.
Do you accuse people who are considering voting Reform of being racist?
No, not in the slightest.
But if they're voting for a party which has racist policies, what does that make them as voters in your view?
Many people are thinking of voting for Reform, want to make sure we've secured our borders, quite right too. That is fundamentally different to Nigel Farage saying he wants to deport migrants who are lawfully here, who've been here for years.
Yeah, except that's not what he's saying. That's never been what he said, and so they're mischaracterising it. But what I tell you Starmer has done is he has now officially declared Nigel Farage and Reform to be the official opposition, so he now must directly deal with Nigel Farage as the leader of the opposition, surely. And he must therefore, in any event when they have a debate between the leaders of the main parties, include Nigel Farage, because he's acknowledged that he is the fight that they have to have with any other political party. That's the thing. Also, how about this from Melanie Phillips, Times columnist, of course. She has put this out this morning, just moments ago. Rub your eyes. Keir Starmer has blamed the Channel migrant boat invasion on Brexit and dubbed the dinghies Farage boats. But the Channel boats have nothing to do with Brexit. The EU convention Starmer was referring to was useless, and Nigel Farage single-handedly forced the small boats issue and the crisis onto the political agenda. Starmer is doing to Farage what he's done to Israel, blaming him grotesquely for an abuse that he's actually fighting. It's truth and lie reversal straight out of the old Soviet playbook, except in Starmer's case it's palpably desperate stuff and pathetic. So there you have it. The old Soviet playbook. Amazing. This country is undergoing some kind of weird political happenstance. That's what I'm saying. Tony Breslin's here, former chief examiner and author of Lessons from Lockdown, because one of the things that Starmer said he wanted to do yesterday was basically try and get less young people going to university and try and get more of them going to do apprenticeships instead. Tony, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Thanks for having us on.
Not at all. Amongst the many things that Keir Starmer says he's going to do, this is just another one, isn't it? Or is he actually is he capable of making it happen?
I think there is the capability to make this happen. There's been a problem with the 50% target in that, yes, it opened up university to a lot of young people who wouldn't have had that chance before.
Yeah.
But it also had the effect of kind of putting university ahead of everything else and above everything else. And what this does is put degrees and apprenticeships on an equal footing so that we, give these incredible skills the credit, frankly, in this country we never really have. So I think it can be achieved. I think it's good that we're saying one or the other for 2/3. Of course, it raises the question, what about the other third? Because that's still a significant number of people. So let's kick on from that. But actually, in that, this raises, the status of apprenticeships. That will be welcomed. It will be welcomed in particular in the further education and training sector. I'm chair of a large FE college group. And we're absolutely thrilled that there's going to be this focus. Now, the question of delivery is simply this. If you make a promise and you don't deliver it, you bring yourself into disrepute. I don't think Keir Starmer intends to do that. And certainly everybody in the FE and skills sector will be working to deliver this. And we need, of course, employers to step forward and for them to make their contribution and to open up these apprenticeship opportunities for young people. But it's a definite step in the right direction. It's not anti-university. It's not reversing anything. But what it's doing is drawing our skilled trades and a whole range of highly skilled activities alongside the degree as a route to secure employment and a route to building the labour force we need.
Yeah. The problem is, of course, Tony,
everything else.
Nobody's got any money. I was speaking to a guy yesterday who hired a bunch of kids during the sort of COVID years, because there were opportunities to get youngsters into companies and they would sort of serve along. I can't remember, there was a name for it, I can't remember what it was. Not Short Start, but something like that, And he said that was great. He said, but we can't afford to do that now because the government's put this higher national insurance cost on us. And quite simply, they've changed the rules on employment rights as well, so that basically somebody who's very much younger has the same rights as somebody who's very much older and probably more experienced. So the incentive to hire young people has kind of disappeared.
Well, look, we'll have to look at all of those things in the mix. But the fact that apprenticeship now sits alongside degree as a route for so many of our young people, and because it's been stated as an objective, nobody has forgotten about the 50% target, which goes back about 15 years.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's going to forget about this one. So let's hope, therefore, we can align any other barriers and remove those so that actually employers, colleges, those involved in training can pull together to make this a reality. At least it's on the political agenda, and that's something that I would welcome.
Yeah. Tony, thanks very much indeed. Let's have a look at what Starmer actually said on apprenticeships.
I can announce we will scrap that target and replace it with a new ambition that 2/3 of our children should go either to university or take a gold standard apprenticeship.
Why does it have to be a gold standard apprenticeship? It's full of all this kind of nonsensical words, isn't it? Gold standard. I don't understand why it would have to be gold standard. On the subject of the NHS, we've got a few tweets here to tell you about. Stuart says this, on the subject of NHS appointments, I had an appointment for November the 3rd. 2 weeks ago, I got a text saying it was cancelled and a letter would follow with another appointment. A few days ago, this letter arrived with a new appointment, exactly the same appointment that I had in the first place, same date, same time, same place. Does that count as 2 appointments then? And then here, from Stuart, who says, hopefully when Mastermind takes over from two-tier Keir, the economy will collapse altogether and Labour will have no choice but to call an election. Well, that's sort of been my theory all along. That's kind of what I've been saying and what I've been getting at. And I wonder whether that is eventually where we are going to end up. Terry in Leeds says, the hypocrites waving their flags while their councils tear them down. Sorry, there's never been so many faking it since the Playboy channel. Yeah, I know what you mean. Unfortunately, I've come to the conclusion that Labour and all their gutter politicians are deliberately sabotaging reform and putting Nigel Farage in absolute danger, says Lorraine. It is a coordinated attack to destroy him, and now to reduce his security is total proof of that. Well, this is the story that we broke here with Yusuf this morning, that Nigel Farage has had his parliamentary security team reduced by 75%. We don't know how many people that is, but 75% fewer bodyguards than he had just 2 weeks ago. Luckily, he's not being put in any danger because he's got private donors who have stepped forward to pay for more security. But absolutely ridiculous. Matt in London says, Mike, if I went online and wrote, I'm all for Starmer getting a good kicking, the police would be at my door within hours. This country has gone to the dogs. I think you're right. Let's get a voice note from Jess.
Hi, Mike. We have a bit of a problem in our house sometimes with the internet. And when I was watching Keir Starmer doing his speech yesterday, he paused so often for so long that I genuinely thought the internet had gone off again. And then he'd start talking again. And it was sequential. It was very strange. Anyway, Jess here from Somerset. Love the show.
Jess, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, I mean, he does. He's a sort of one-man buffer machine, isn't he? Is it buffering again? No. Rodney, what are you doing? How are your shoes? Have you got those nice Adidas blue shoes on with your mate Lord Ali? Did he buy those for you? Did he? Did you go shopping for them together? Or does he just turn up in Downing Street with a sort of job lot of a lorry full of blue Adidas shoes? All right, Rodney? Mike, why hasn't Starmer been arrested for inciting violence? What he said was far worse than Lucy Connolly's deleted tweet, says Janice in Chester. Well, also, he said it to an audience that was watching worldwide on national television. Becky in the Peak District says, Mike, great show as always. The language being used by ministers in the Labour Party from the top to the bottom is absolutely inciting violence. Again, this dangerous two-tier policing is getting scary. Well, coming up, we're going to speak to Graham Stringer, MP, Labour MP for Blackley and Middleton South. We'll find out what he makes of the ratcheting up of the language and the ratcheting up of the personal attacks on Nigel Farage and reform. We'll see what he makes of it.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. 37 minutes, I should say, past 9. Unbelievable, Mike. I think it's now time for Starmer to face Nigel in a head-to-head debate on all TV channels, says Bill in Northumberland. And Peter says, Mike, the Biden government downgraded Trump's Secret Service team before he was shot at, says Peter in Southend-on-Sea. Interesting times that we live in, and dangerous times as well. Let's talk to Graham Stringer, MP, Labour, Blackley and Middleton South. Graham, very good morning to you.
Morning.
I was slightly disturbed, more than slightly disturbed actually, by the tone of Keir Starmer's speech yesterday. Do you think he went over the top?
I have always believed, sometimes against the evidence, that politics should be a rational argument and debate based on facts acknowledged by both sides. I think extreme language should be avoided, and calling Nigel Farage a racist, and you can follow the logic, that really implies that the supporters are racist, because if it's racist politics, I think that's a huge mistake. Both pragmatically, it's not going to persuade people to vote Labour and not vote Reform. It's going to motivate and solidify those people who were going to vote Reform anyway, and those people who might be considering voting Reform. It's not a rational argument. It's name-calling, like you get in school playgrounds.
It really is. But it's worse than that in a way, isn't it? Because he knows what he's doing. I mean, people say, you know, he's right to say that there's a choice between Labour and Reform. You know, one, I don't know how you would feel about that, because he's basically acknowledging Reform as the main opposition party for a start. But secondly, he's kind of trying to create this kind of good versus evil narrative, which I don't think is helpful at all.
I don't think it's helpful. As I say, I think I don't support Reform. I'm a Labour MP, sometimes critical of our policies. But I don't think it's helpful. And we should remember that fairly recently, a Conservative MP was murdered, a Labour MP was murdered, a Labour MP was stabbed in the stomach. Yeah. Some distance before that, a Lib Dem assistant with the Liberal MP was murdered. That is new to our politics, and we don't want to make it worse. We want to reduce that and be... I try, again, occasionally fail, to be as respectful as I can to the opposition, because people are participating in a democracy and they deserve their arguments and them personally to be given respect.
Yes, I think that's right. And, you know, it's not old-fashioned to think like that, I don't think. I mean, Nigel Farage was quite interesting in his remarks afterwards. He says, I thought Keir Starmer was a decent man. He said, I thought he was a guy that I could disagree with and who I could speak to in a civil manner about it. But it turns out that Keir Starmer is so desperate that he doesn't feel he can do that anymore, because it looks to me like the act of a sort of desperate man.
If I just broaden it out, the speech yesterday, he rallied the troops, which is always, I think, going over the top with the language. But he didn't do the basics of explaining how we're going to improve the country, particularly in the run-up to a difficult budget. He decided to lower the tone of the debate by quite a lot. In terms of what Nigel Farage was saying, I think he basically is a decent man, but he seems to lose it when he gets involved in really tough debates or when he's under fire. Bending his knee to Black Lives Matter, which is an organisation that wants to defund the police, saying that women, it works out at about 1/3 of a million women and girls in this country have penises. They're pretty odd things, and I think what he did yesterday, I just don't think he thought through the consequences for harmony and decency in the body politic.
But that's really not acceptable in somebody as important in as important position as that is, because he's not just a leader of a small party. He's not just the leader of the opposition. He's now the Prime Minister of this country. He represents the people, all the people, which is what he says he does, but he's effectively tarring a whole crowd of them, millions of them, in fact, with the racism, insult.
Yeah, there's complete contradiction in his speech that he wanted to bring. I don't think he used the word harmony, but he wanted to bring everybody together and represent everybody, which he did say. And yet he was painting a significant number of voters into a corner with the label racist on them. I think there's a complete contradiction, and I think it's really regrettable if a Prime Minister uses language like that.
I mean, in your position as a senior Labour MP, as you say, someone who's a loyal Labour MP but is always critical of the leadership, I mean, would you consider communicating that to the Prime Minister, to say to him, look, I don't think this was wise, I think you might want to step back from it a little bit, maybe, water it down slightly, or maybe even apologise for going too far?
Yes. I mean, I wouldn't do it in a letter, I don't think, because I guess he wouldn't read it. That's been the response of a number. I've not written to him recently. People haven't been getting replies to their letters, Labour MPs, that is. But if I see him, I would certainly say that.
Andy Burnham said at the beginning of the Labour Party conference that the Labour Party was now governed by fear, that there was an atmosphere of fear in the party. Would you say that's right?
I think Andy was going a bit over the top on that as well. I think what is different, as somebody who occasionally has voted against the whip on things like Iraq and the European Union and COVID, the whips have been relatively tolerant, particularly if we've had a big majority like we do at the moment. But a number of good Labour MPs have had the whip taken off them. So I think in that sense, Andy is right. If you want to pull a party, let alone a nation, together on some big issues, you just have to accept that MPs look at the facts and come to different conclusions than the Prime Minister does.
Right.
I mean, Tony Blair didn't expel people.
No, of course not, because he was confident enough to know that you could have this, sort of dissected views in the broad church, because he had a big enough majority to do it. But so does Starmer. He should be a bit more confident about it. But he doesn't have any confidence, because I think deep down he doesn't really think that he should be the leader, because he doesn't really know what he's doing.
Tony Blair, and I had criticisms of him, particularly over Iraq, where he knew most of the Labour Party, a lot of the country were against him. He never stopped arguing the case in detail with the facts, and I don't think he has got the confidence in some ways to do that. He missed an opportunity yesterday when we're coming up to a very internally divisive issue for the Labour Party, when difficult, tough decisions will have to be made on the budget. There was almost nothing said about that.
Just incredible stuff. Graham, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Graham Stringer, MP for Blackley and Middleton South. Although somebody's just told me it's pronounced Blakely and Middleton South, if you say so, for Labour, of course. He says he thinks Keir Starmer made a massive mistake. I think any right-thinking person knows that Keir Starmer made a massive mistake. Let's get a voice note from Kim.
Hi, Mike. Great show. I don't understand why the Labour Party have to feel offended by indefinite leave to remain having to get their citizenship. I've had mine for 22 years and I haven't got it, mainly because life's got in the way. I've married a Brit. I'm from New Zealand, so therefore I follow the King because we're part of the Commonwealth. I speak English. And yet if I have to go for my citizenship, I have to pay £50 for the test for the UK, life in the UK, which I've been going through the answers or questions with my kids, and they don't even know the answers. And then to actually apply for the visa itself or for the passport, it's another £1,800. So I don't understand why they feel offended. because we have to go through those hoops. I don't mind that, but let's just face it, get on with it, which is what I'm doing now. Kim from Northamptonshire.
Kim from Northamptonshire, thanks very much indeed. There's no suggestion that Nigel Farage is going to start throwing people out of the country who have got the absolute right to be here because they're earning a good living and they're contributing to society. The idea that Starmer says that's what he wants to do is entirely incorrect and wrong and misleading and dangerous and all of those things. It's 9:47.
I think David Lammy must resign immediately, and then I would call upon Merseyside Police to carry out an investigation into the Labour Party for that there are a large number of offences, and I don't want to get bogged down in technicalities, that the public broadly know is incitement to violence. And I think we've seen them at the Labour Party conference. I think that's disgraceful. I have friends in the Labour Party, I have friends on the left. I hope that they are utterly shocked and disgraced.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 10 minutes to 10. I don't know where the time's gone. It's October the 1st. We're into a new month, into a whole new political era, for heaven's sake. This from William in Yorkshire. After listening to Starmer and his cohorts yesterday, I thought they were absolutely disgraceful. And if I had any doubt who to vote for, I don't now, and it certainly won't be Labour. Well, I think you speak for an awful lot of people there, William. Let's talk to Connie Shaw, who's with the Free Speech Union. Connie, very good morning to you. Welcome. So much weird stuff going on at the moment in politics, but we're going to talk about Shabana Mahmood, who came out yesterday and actually said... when she was asked if she thought that Keir Starmer Nigel Farage was a racist, she went, "Oh, I think it's worse than that." Yes. And you kind of go, "Sorry, what do you mean by that?" This is the woman who wants to talk about Islamophobia and bringing a law in. So what's she saying about that?
Well, actually, what Shabana Mahmood said in that interview with Michael Gove was that she's concerned that if anything that's created by this government, whether it be Islamophobia definition or anything else, if that infringes on free speech, then that's an issue, which is great because that's what we're concerned about at the Free Speech Union. So this Islamophobia definition that Angela Rayner took the lead with when she was Deputy Prime Minister is basically an attempt to, what the government says, to tackle is what they are calling Islamophobia, or what some other people might call anti-Muslim hatred. Now, the issue that we have is that we're concerned that it could have an awful impact on free free speech. It was announced in a really sort of secretive way on the same day that Yvette Cooper announced the national inquiry into the grooming gangs. The consultation was opened. It was a very sort of ironic and eerie way of doing it. But not only that, the lack of transparency, that is the lack of transparency, the fact that it seemed to be happening under, you know, a bit covered up, it felt as though, but also the lack of the way that the consultation has been carried out originally was only open to a very select few groups, not open to free speech groups or people who were concerned about the impact this might have, and also the lack of objectivity. A lot of the people on this working group have previously supported the 2018 APPG definition of Islamophobia, which said that Islamophobia was rooted in racism, which is conflating a religion with race. It also said that to talk about the perpetrators of grooming gangs being predominantly Pakistani men was a form of Islamophobia. So it's concerning that lots of people on this working group were in favour, at least at the time, including Shabana Mahmood. She, at the time, supported the 2018 APPG definition.
She's an interesting case in point, isn't she? Because we're discovering things about what she's done in the past which might not lead to you thinking that she's the right person for the job of Home Secretary. For example, what you've just mentioned, but also on an island somewhere, I think it was in Greece, welcoming migrants into Europe, you know, saying welcome, come in, you know, you can all come flooding in, doesn't matter if you're illegal or not. And the whole premise of the Islamophobia law is a nonsense, isn't it? Because it doesn't need to be put into place. There's plenty of protection for people in the general sphere of public discourse. If you want to say something about someone which is libelous, you're going to get sued for libel. If you want to say something that's going to upset them, you should be able to.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that the Home Secretary did say was that she's concerned that it may look like that one group is getting special protection. That's exactly what it looks like in my opinion, because there isn't any other religion that gets a special definition to protect the religion. It's Islamophobia. It's not anti-Muslim hatred, which we think would be a far better definition if you're going to call it anything. So yeah, it's a good sign. It is a good sign that the Home Secretary is talking about this. It shows that our campaign is definitely working. Since we've been putting pressure on the government to really look at this, the consultation deadline has been extended. The work has been opened, to more people. So anyone who wants to, they can respond to the consultation. The deadline for the working group's work to finish has been extended. Also, Steve Reed has come out and said that there is concerns about free speech on this. So it's not only, our campaign is not only working on the actual creation of this definition, but also cabinet ministers are now raising concerns too.
And is there a sense that since Angela Rayner's resignation, it's not being pushed quite so much, or is it sort of more in the long grass
potentially
now?
But I honestly think that it's due to our campaign, genuinely our campaigning, that has raised this issue.
No, I'm sure it is. The Free Speech Union have done some fantastic work lately on all manner of things, and there's always a case or two going on in the background that I'm sure you can tell us about. But I mean, it's just the whole idea of this Islamophobia law, which just the sense from my point of view is that it's being pushed by people with an agenda, that it's not really about, you know, fairness. It's not about, you know, looking after people who might be vulnerable. It's all about pushing an agenda to stop people and to make a sort of chilling message to people to say, don't talk about Muslims in a way which might be considered to be negative.
I completely sympathise with that perspective. It is concerning to see the way in which this government are suppressing free speech in all directions. And here we have Keir Starmer still saying that he's very proud of our free speech and will always protect it fiercely. So yes, I completely understand that perspective. And that's why no religion should be free of criticism. And you look at the case of Hamid Koskin, the man who burnt the Quran, who then had a man try and slash a knife at him. That man with the knife has now been spared jail. He has. But Hamid is now living in hiding, was fined 250 quid for his expression. You know, of course it was an offensive political process, but there's no point having free speech if you don't have the right to be offensive.
Of course.
Freedom of expression.
And the judge said at the time, didn't he, when he was examining the case, that, well, more or less you asked for it by being horrible. And it was like, well, sorry, that's not what free speech is about. And not only was the guy trying to slash him with a knife, he was kicking him, he was threatening him, he was saying, I'm going to kill you. And he's now got a suspended sentence. It makes no sense.
It was extraordinary reading the differences in sentencing remarks from Hamid's sentencing judge to the man who was slashing a knife at him. The judge saying to the man who had a knife, "Oh, you're a really great guy. You've never done anything like this in your life." Whereas Hamid, it was part of the evidence used to prove that he was causing alarm, harassment or distress, was the fact that a man tried to slash a knife at him. Hamid originally charged with harassing the institution of Islam. We already have de facto blasphemy laws in this country. We have a clear two-tier system. There is no other way. This case is a transparent case of that being the case, that there is a two-tier system in this country. It's not always to do with the judge. Our laws are ridiculous. You know, people charged of, you know, convicted of sexual crimes getting shorter sentences than Lucy Connolly.
Right.
I mean, it's just absolutely outrageous. So the last thing we need is a new definition of Islamophobia, which the government says is non-statutory, which is even more confusing, because what's the point of it? If it's non-statutory, then what's going to be the effect of it? Why do we need it at all?
Yeah, well, that would be my point. We don't need it at all. I don't think so. Thank you very much indeed. Connie Shaw, good to see you. Great to see you as ever. External Affairs Editor, officer, I should say, from Free Speech Union. Julie Hartley-Brewis here.
Union?
The Free Speech Union. You know, the thing we used to have, you know, where you could say things and upset people, and that would be the end of it.
I think only the Prime Minister has that now. Oh, and David Lammy.
Yeah, they can do it. That's okay.
Wow. Can I just say, wow.
Yes.
Even this morning.
I know.
Wow.
I know.
Some of the interviews that Keir Starmer is doing. I mean, I didn't call Nigel Farage racist. No, I didn't call Reform voters racist. Just all the policies, everything they do, genuinely. Yeah. I've never known a conference speech which is all about another party.
I've never seen anything like that speech in my entire career.
When I went down a storm in the conference hall, well, they were absolutely loving it. They just don't realise the entire... What is the only story out... Look, maybe there's a bit of Andy Burnham, that's gone away. The only other story out party conference is Nigel Farage. You're 15 months in to a landslide election victory, and your only vision is, I'm not Nigel Farage. Yeah. What does that tell you?
Exactly. Unbelievable. It sounded a bit like a Nuremberg rally at one point. Sorry to bring that up.
Does everything have to be like... I think genuinely, I think Nigel Farage should start getting the libel lawyers out.
Have you seen the story this morning? Zia Yusuf came on the show and said that they've cancelled 75% of his protection.
He has had to have security
from Parliament,
years.
but Parliament has cancelled it. That's an extraordinary thing to have happened. What could be possibly the reason for that, other than just somebody meddling? Because it doesn't seem to me to be justifiable, because he's had to now pay for his own security, which is nonsensical, isn't it?
I just think, I mean, any elected member of our democratic institutions who faces those sort of threats should absolutely have their security paid for. It's an absolutely vital part of our democracy. Right. But I mean, did they miss the news about Charlie Kirk?
Apparently
did they miss that news?
No. They did not miss that news, and that's why it's even more sinister, I think, and that's what worries me.
Yeah.
And he knows exactly